All right, there we go. Jordan Cooper, what's going on, man?
Nothing. It's what else is going on? There's nothing going on. There's no. I'm not playing esports, so like there's. I'm not playing simulated Madden contests, so there's really nothing going on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not doing the simulated stuff either, but I have really dove in deep, whatever the word is, deep into the world of esports. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. It's like any other DFS sport, right? One week I feel like a genius, like, oh, I think I'm gonna figure something out, and I think I'm onto something. And the next week I'm like, no, I'm stupid for playing this. So still on the up and down. Very desperate for something to do, though. I'll agree with you there. Very desperate on something to. So what kinds of things are you doing? Like someone like you who normally, and I know there's a couple interesting things about you, Jordan. Right? I saw on your Twitter you're a comedian, right? As well. I know
Well,
you're was.
I guess I consider myself a comedian. But I was a professional stand-up comic for a while.
That's phenomenal. I
I
love
don't
comedy.
do that anymore. But it's,
Right.
I am funny.
You're a funny guy. You're definitely a funny guy. I've seen you on things before. My wife and I are huge comedy fans. We love comedy. So that was one of the things. I think I came across your profile a while ago, and I just recently reached out to you. Obviously, we don't know each other, but that was one of the things that caught my attention was the comedian thing. Because there's one thing in life, and everybody goes through ups and downs, and if there's one thing that it seems always good, it's laughter and jokes. Right? Doesn't that seem like no matter
Hey,
what?
I meet people that don't like comedy. I did.
I know.
Oh, you're a stand-up comic? I'm not really a big fan of comedy. Like, who's not a fan of comedy?
But here's the thing: are they not a fan of comedy, of like going to comedy shows, or are they just not a fan of like laughter? You know what I'm saying? Like, are they just that sadistic and evil of a person that they don't even like laugh? They don't like the laughter, or is it more like it's awkward that I'm sitting there and this guy I know he's gonna try to make jokes, like because that you understand that sometimes people don't find it funny unless it's natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. But those are typically the people that don't even watch like stand-up specials on Netflix or
Right.
anything.
Right.
Just people that don't that yeah, they'll watch a funny movie every once in a while, but a lot of times the quote funny movie are stupid. Like they're not even funny.
Yeah.
Like it's sophomoric humor. So like I guess I could understand, but to me like stand-up is an art form. There's a science to it. It's you know there's a technicality to it that could be appreciated, even if you could always find a comic that reaches your own sensibilities. So it's not just like, oh, I'm not a fan of comedy because the three comics that I saw when I was whatever 10 years ago, they were too dirty or something like that, and then all of a sudden you hate stand up comedy. But as a stand up comic, I've seen thousands of comics and tons of comics that I don't necessarily find funny, but I still respect as performers, still respect as writers. There are plenty of like the Jeff Dunham who does with the he has all the
Yeah, the
characters, the
puppets. Yeah.
ventriloquist type of stuff. I don't find that funny,
Right.
but as a performer, I respect the art. Dane Cook was someone that I never found funny. He never wrote jokes. It's just like, oh, I'm going to do something just stupid, whatever. But like he's good at that. Like if you like that type of comedy, I understand why. I don't, but I still, as a performer, as a writer, like I could still respect it because it works in any field, just like in DFS.
Yeah.
There are many different playing styles, that many different approaches in DFS. They share a lot of qualities, but like if you're good at what you do, even if it's not the way that I do it, I still have to respect that in some way, and I could still watch it. I could watch an hour Larry the Cable Guy comedy special and be like, well, this isn't funny, but it's kind of like a magician watching another magician. It's, okay, that trick, okay, everyone knows that trick. Everyone, they made the dumb audience laugh at that thing. I saw the joke coming from a mile away. But it's like, okay, I'm watching someone perform their art, and it's an art that I know, and I can respect. Okay, I see what he did there. Oh, I see why that was good. It's like, okay, that was like the cheap way of going, but whatever. And that's why typically comics, like the term comic, are typically the comics that are more edgy, like more taboo, or design their jokes in a way where it's extremely hard to find out where they're going. So you appreciate that a lot more, even though they tend to have more niche audiences, because you tend to have to be maybe a little smarter or a little bit more open-minded, where it's like I'm viewing the joke as a joke. And it doesn't matter if the joke is about some really fucked up subject. It's like, no, I'm just viewing it as a joke. In the same way that it could be a dumb joke, but I'm still viewing it as a joke. So it doesn't matter whether or not you have props, ventriloquism, or whatever. It's like if you could perform the magic trick well, I applaud you.
Right.
And that's why you also see that a lot of comics like don't laugh often.
Right.
Because it's just like a magician. Like, you can't surprise another magician very well. So the things that I laugh at tend to be really fucked up things. Not because I'm fucked up, it's just because it's going to take a lot to surprise me. The way you have a joke is I already know all the tricks.
Right. No, I totally understand that. Is there like
who are your favorite comics?
Oh man. So I was never like I was never like in the comedy world, so like the underground guys, but whenever I saw comedies, you know, like a stand-up special out, and especially Netflix has been awesome because I don't have to look for them anymore. You know, there's a place where they have dedicated. Think about it. Before Netflix and all this shit, like before the internet and YouTube, like you had to have a really strong interest in comedy, especially as like a young person, like a kid at that time, in order to get in front of a good stand-up. You're relying on either your parents having that sense of comedy and being a fan of these stand-up comedians. So like for me, it was more like when I was like in my teens. So it was like late teens, I would say. So like I'm trying to think. Like Katt Williams was one of the more notable ones. Old school one. What's his name? The first comedy show I ever went to was in Vegas. David Brenner.
David Brenner.
David Brenner. That guy. Yep. That was my first comedy show. I think I was like I said, I was a teenager. I was in Vegas, so there wasn't a ton for me to do at that time in Vegas. So I was visiting. I didn't live there. But anyway, that was the first one. My dad got free tickets and I went there. And I didn't know nothing about comedy, and I watched the special, and he killed it. He had me dying. He was making like the big nose jokes and with his buddy. It was hilarious. At that point, he had already been way past his prime, right? He's already done with those primetime TV. He's doing Vegas, just kind of living his life towards the end of his career, all that kind of stuff. After that, and then I went back. My dad took me to another show like a week later. And again, I didn't realize how comedy worked. However, you have an act, and you kind of tore that act out. Kind of everywhere. So
right, a lot of people think you just make shit up on the spot, and it's just every show is different. It's like there may be parts of that, you know, there may be little changes or whatever, but I mean, for the most part, if you see a stand-up comic like a David Brenner do an hour, like you could watch him 8 times in a row, and you're watching the same show 8 times in a row.
Exactly. So we went back in a couple days, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what he's got today, and I'm thinking, and then when he did it again, what I noticed was that when he did it again, even though he was doing it again, he was doing every joke as if it was the first time he ever said it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't feel like it was him doing this for the 100th time in the last fucking 6 months or whatever the case is. And I respect
but there's a skill to that. There is a skill to
100%. 100%. Now, I used to be, before I was into the DFS and everything like that, I used to be a professional wrestler. From the time I was 16, I was in wrestling rings, and I was doing that. I thought that was kind of my destiny, my path. So, like comedy, you understand, it's kind of similarly to, like, in wrestling. And I want to actually ask you a question because of my wrestling background. Like, in wrestling, they kind of teach you the same thing as movies. Like, there's 7 steps, typically, give or take. The 7 steps to a wrestling match, right? There's the opening where the characters establish who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Right, then you get the quick baby face shows, I'm the better wrestler, right? The bad guy cuts him off. That's the cutoff. The heel is now taking control. Then there's heat, right? The heel's dominating the match. You give a couple hope spots. Baby face real quick with the pin, but he kicks out. A little bit of hope, cuts him back off. And you do that a little bit, right? Then the comeback, the finish, all that good stuff. So in comedy, is there a structure to that? Because like I can't quite pinpoint it because everybody, like you said, has so many different styles. Like, is there a structure to like... Okay, so in the beginning, you want to kind of bring them here, but then you want to kind of bring... You know what I'm saying? Is there like a thing, or do people just go out there?
It really depends on the audience. I mean, it's very... you bring up wrestling, and I used to be a big wrestling fan, and I was more of a fan. Probably you would appreciate it as a wrestler. Like I grew up in the Northeast, so like I went to ECW, Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I watched WCW and WWF during, like, obviously there's the Monday Night Wars. Like, that's the era that, like, I watch wrestling.
Right.
Like Nitro versus Raw.
When it was
versus,
good.
You know. Yeah, when it was good, right. But, like, I appreciated the wrestling. I appreciated the storytelling of the match. Yeah. I appreciated technical. Like, I didn't like, yeah, The Rock was, like, great on the mic and, you know, great in the ring as far as a personality, but not, like, the greatest wrestler. Right. Like, I preferred to see, like, I like the the Sabu versus Rob Van Dam type of match. I don't care. Like, they don't have to talk at all. Like, I just want to see quality wrestling where I'm surprised. Like, it's the same thing with comedy. I want to be able to be surprised. Yeah. In the 80s, it was very easy. Once Hulk Hogan stopped taking punches and started wagging his face, it's like you knew he was going to be off the rope, a leg drop in a pit. Like, you're not going to be surprised by anything. Right. Like, you know how these matches, like you said, the Undertaker, like, it's always the same thing. He walks across the rope, and then he does on the back, and then he sets up for the tombstone. It's like I've seen that before. So I want to see matches where, like, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and I really don't even care who wins. Like, I'm not rooting for one guy over the other. I'm just rooting, like, if it's going to be Taz versus Mike Awesome or something like that. Like, I don't know who's going to win, but all I know is it's going to be an amazing match between two guys that are going to make suplexes and everything. Maybe it goes out. Maybe someone else comes in. But that's what I'm looking for. But when it comes to comedy, just like in a wrestling match, like, it's not, like, it's not scripted. You have a baseline of what's going to happen, but of course you're whispering in each other's ears, right? Yeah. The referee moves, like, I know how all the communication works.
Yeah, of course.
Comedy works kind of the same way, that depending on where I'm performing and depending on what jokes hit for certain audiences, this is especially important if you're unknown. Obviously, if you're a known, if people are coming out to see you, they're coming out to a theater for 1,600 people, and seeing, Hannibal Buress or something like that, you don't have to do any of this shit. They're coming to see you. They're a fan of you to begin with. But if I'm going into a comedy club in Greensboro, North Carolina, they don't know me from a hole in the wall. Right. I got to perform a half an hour. And yes, I know in general, like, Friday late shows tend to be more, like, rowdy. I know Sunday shows tend to be a little bit more low key because of the types of people that come out during those times. But for a lot of the time, I need to set up my act. Like, I'm doing a half an hour, but I may have like an hour and a half worth of material. Mm-hmm. And I may have a half an hour of A material, half an hour of B material, half an hour of C material, and they can all work together depending on the subject matter and, the dirtiness of it or whatever. That I have to decide. I have a plan going forward of, like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the half an hour I want to do. And it may be the same as what I would normally do, but maybe shift out 3 minutes, 4 minutes here and there. But I can always tell that from the beginning of, okay, I know this joke works. These are bits that I've done so many times that I know that something works like 98% of the time. Typically, I want to open with that because they don't know me from a hole in the wall. And a lot of times, watching a comic in the audience is a lot about trust. Like, they want you to be there. They paid their money so you could make them laugh. But since they don't know who you are, and if you're good, they're like on the edge of their seat going, I hope this guy is good because it's going to be really awkward if we have to sit here for a half an hour and kind of be like, this guy kind of sucks, yet we're still staring at him and he can see us looking at them. So it's a very awkward situation. So you always want to open strong so you could establish that, don't worry, let your guard down, just relax, get your drink. We're going to have a good time. So I need to always front load my act, at least the first 3 minutes, with stuff that I know no one's going to find to be too dirty. I know no one's going to be find too offensive. It's going to be, it's going to establish what my voice is. Like, this is the style of comedy you're going to see. In the first 3 minutes, picture the first 3 minutes and extend it 10 more times. That's what you're going to see. I was never a storyteller comic. I typically wrote very short jokes, not one-liners, but kind of Seinfeld-esque, which is like, I'm not saying I wrote Seinfeld-like jokes. I was typically a little bit more edgy. Like, this style of, I'm going to bring up a premise, I'm going to lead you along, you're going to get a little laugh here, a little laugh there, and then a punchline. And then a minute later, I'm going to weave that into another joke, and then to another joke, and then, like, topically go through. And so I need to front load my act with, like, the first 3 minutes of, like, you're going to laugh. Like, I know I'm going to get in 3 minutes, going to get 6 laughs. Like, that's what I'm aiming for. And once I can do that, then it's like, okay, now where do I want to go? Do I want to skip over the part that I normally do here for that may be a little too dirty? Or do I sometimes jokes have multiple taglines? So, like, you may have a premise and then a punchline and then you may have another punchline on top of that, and then another one on top. Like you're building off your punchlines, but some of the taglines may be like really offensive, and I'd be like, okay, this doesn't seem like the type of crowd that's gonna like that tagline. But if it's a smart crowd that is really on my side, like I've already established that they're gonna go along with me with this type of stuff, I'm gonna throw that in. But I'm on the fly can just say, fuck that tagline, I'm moving on. Or I may get to a premise where I know that I have like a chunk of 3 or 4 minutes of other material on that subject that may not be as great, but still goes along with it. And like, if they're really on board with that subject matter, on the fly, I'll go, okay, I'm just going to add these 3 minutes chunk on top of it because they seem to be going along with it. I mean, it's still a pre-planned chunk. It's just that I have the option of like, it's like a module. Like, so you're setting up your whole act. You have like an hour and a half worth of material, but you have these little modules and little lines and little everything there. And you go on the fly while you're doing it. It's like, oh, they really like that joke. And now I'm waiting for a laughter to end. And I just on the fly go, well, I'm just going to go into this 3 minutes. I'm going to insert that there. And then knowing that I'm putting 3 minutes into there and to do a half an hour or something, I know that at some point down the road in my head, this is the type of thing this is why I say it's a skill to look like you're doing it off the top of your head, because most of the time, a lot of comics will tell you that when they're on stage doing their act, a lot of times they have out of body type of experiences. Like I could be literally doing my act and the 90% of my brain is thinking about what I'm having for dinner after the show. While I'm doing and it still looks like I'm coming up with it only because I've done it so much. And I perfected those bits but that allows me in my head to go, okay, now that I'm doing this bit, I look up at the clock or I have a little watch and I go like I'm 20 minutes in and I'm like, if I do these next 3 minutes, I have to think about what I'm cutting out later. So now I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to skip past this. So while I'm doing my act, I'm going, okay, I'm going to skip over there and try to get directly to that closing bit that I would normally close. Typically, you want to open strong and close strong. So now you're trying to figure out, well, let's say your closing bit, or let's say a bit down the road has a callback to a previous joke. I've never done it, but I've seen other comics do it because I know their acts, because I work with them on the road or whatever like that. Not to do a punchline or a tagline of a joke that you didn't do earlier. Like you have to keep that in your head going like, I'm gonna make a callback, a reference to a joke that I would have normally done like 5 minutes into my act. Right. And then realize that I've never done that. Right. Like that callback makes sense because like obviously like I didn't say that thing back then or something like that. But these are the types of things and I think it's, like you said, very comparable to wrestling. Yeah. In a way where you have probably prepackaged moves of like, you don't have to tell your opponent that you're working with that, oh, do this, do these 15 different things. You could just say like one thing, go, let's do that, whatever the hell thing that we were talking about backstage. And it's a combination of 8 moves. Right. No. So that's constantly thinking through, and then based on probably the heat that you're getting from the audience. Exactly. Going, oh, they're really into this. So let's do that thing, or let's skip that other thing. So, I mean, is it comparable?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% is comparable. It's the exact same thing, right? Like you may talk, like I was always someone, like I'm big, I'm a big smoker and all that. So with me, like short-term memory is not my strength. You know what I mean? Short-term, which for DFS is great sometimes because like, I have a bad day. The next day I'm not depressed about it. I'm just like, all right, on to the next and let's go. But for wrestling, it's a good thing and a bad thing because there are some people who want to plan every little detail. They're so detail oriented and maybe they don't, usually newer people, they don't have a feel for the crowd. And then there's some guys who are a little more experienced. The more experience you get, you don't need to talk about shit. Because like you said, you've already got the basics in your head. It's more so about establishing the character anyway. And you want to be athletic and you can have good matches. But if you're in there where the guy knows what he's doing, like you said, it's just a couple things. Like if I say the universal spot, that's like 4 or 5 different things that's a whole sequence of things. Let's do the universal spot. It's like, you know what I mean? Like it's a whole, like you said, it's not just one thing, it's a whole sequence. We just bought ourselves the next 20 seconds and you know what I mean? And do it bit by bit. And like you said, it's all about reacting and reading to the crowd. A matter of fact, I recall one specific match. I had in Binghamton, New York, which was far as hell. I had been like, I was still pretty early into my wrestling career. I think I was like 19 years old. So, you know what I mean? I'm young. I'm in great shape. And I was like a pretty boy character. And I was wrestling this big dude, a buddy of mine named Brawley. Awesome dude, but real big guy. Big guy and just scary looking, man. Long red hair and like a fucking nasty beard and just a scary motherfucker. Like this nicest guy in the world when you meet him, which is often the case in the wrestling business, but just a scary looking motherfucker. And we went to, Binghamton, and it was more of a grungy crowd. It was more like rocker. They were big, heavy metal guys, and like in the there was a lot of people there, man. It was probably like 300 people. Our first time for that company wrestling in that place. So, like you said, nobody knows us, nobody's seen us before. So I go in there. We're the first match out the gate. I had no idea what to expect from this crowd. My music hits. I go out, and they're fucking booing me. And I'm like the good guy. And I'm doing all the good guy stuff, man. I come out there, I'm high-fiving them and all. They're booing the shit out of me. Did not like the pretty boy thing. They were not cool with that. And then Brawley comes out, and he's used to, like, usually kids look at him and start screaming. That's how fucking scary this motherfucker was. And they're cheering the shit out of him. So right to start the match, our whole match got flipped around. Because there's a sequence where the bad guy needs to be, you got to give the fans that chase, for the good guy. They have to be chasing for the good guy to win. So we had to switch roles on the spot, and I had to be the heel all of a sudden. I had to be the bad guy. We didn't talk about none of that shit. You got to do what you got to do. And, like you said, you have things in your mind. If you've done this before, you know what your go-tos are. But similar to what you said, you got to make sure not to pull something out at the end of the match that you didn't establish in the beginning. If you're cutting spots, it's like you said, because sometimes we also may call a spot that in the beginning it led you somewhere. Say in the beginning of the match, I fucked your hand up. We were kind of teasing the whole time going to the hand, and at the end we have a spot where you go to punch me, I duck, and you punch the pole, and now your fucking hand's back, and then I kick you and it's over. Right? Like the hand, it came back to the hand. But if we never established the hand because we weren't feeling it or the positioning wasn't right, we got to remember not to fucking use that same finish. We better change that finish because the hand, what the fuck? You stepped on your hand and that was it? Like, you punched the thing one time? There was no build up behind that hand. So, like you said, man, it's all about, like, while you're going through the motions, you're thinking about, is this making sense right now? Like, because like you said, the fans are trusting you in both of these, comedy, wrestling, whatever, and pretty much every live entertainment. They're trusting you to entertain them and to take them on a story. And anytime you go to entertain, you want to see a story. It's got to make sense. People like shit that makes sense. People like shit that eventually leads you somewhere, even if it seems scattered. Like whenever people watch a movie like Crash, one of those crazy movies where there's like 20 things going on, in the beginning, I feel like most people are just like, what the fuck, man? There's too many things going on. And then they love the movie at the end, because at the end it all fucking tied together. And they're like, okay, so it paid off for paying attention to these 20 motherfuckers, even though I was confused in the beginning, because eventually, if I didn't, this story wouldn't make sense at the end. So, fuck. And you're right. It's huge. Like, having everything make sense and kind of tie together. There are a lot of similarities with what you were saying with the whole comedy thing and in the pro wrestling world. It's wild. But like you said, like, having that professional wrestling background, like, for instance, I would assume that there's obviously positives and negatives to everything. But in comedy, like, there's positives and negatives to going to a venue where nobody knows you. And then there's positives and negatives to going somewhere where people do know you. Right? If they do know you, you don't have to worry so much about establishing who you are because they know who you are. However, you can't use some of those bailout jokes because they know those jokes already. They've heard those jokes already. Right? So it's almost...
Well, that's like 0.2% of comedy.
Right.
I mean, when people think of stand-up comedy, like, they don't realize that even if you just go by the number of comics that are on Netflix now, and I know that they're coming out with, obviously tons more specials than back in the day with like HBO and Comedy Central. Like, for every one professional comic that you see with an Netflix special, there are 50 other professional comics. And when I say professional, someone that makes the primary portion of their income doing stand-up comedy. Oh, yeah. There's 50 more of them. So so just the amount of people that know who you are is typically extremely small, no matter what, for normal stand-up comedy. I never went into any situation in my entire career where I assumed that the majority of the crowd knew any of my jokes. I mean, because why would you? I wasn't on TV. I didn't have an album that people bought. Some people that may have seen me in that town a year ago, 3 people came back. I mean, like, out of 250 people in an
You'll sacrifice those 3.
I may get that. Right. So like, I'll see those three before the show, and I remember you last time. Whatever. Are you gonna? And then even if they remember, a lot of times they'll remember seeing me, but they won't remember any of my material. It's like, oh, you look familiar. Yeah, I was here. Like, did you perform with so and so guy? Yeah, I was here. Yeah, that was the last time I was here. It's like, oh, you were really good. And but like they literally don't know my. I could do my act the same thing I did a year and a half ago, and they would act like it's new to them because who remembers that? So like, unlike in wrestling, like most of the time, unless you get to the point where like you're actually a draw, most stand-up comics that are professionals like never really. I don't have to. I always need to establish myself as a performer because no one knows who I am.
Right. No. It makes sense on that scale. You know, like in wrestling, there'd be like, because you know, you have like when you train, and sometimes not everybody, but some people have like their home company, and they have shows out of one specific town or two towns or three towns that they circle. So you're just hitting the same spots every like month. You're hitting the same spots, and so they start to get familiar with you. Whereas, like, I would have a match, like one guy that made it to, I don't know if you know, made it to NXT. His name is Bull James, I think. Now, Bull Dempsey was his name, I think, in NXT. But anyway, he was the guy that I came up with in the training circuit. He made it all the way up there. And we worked so well together because we came in kind of at the same time. We were training all the time. That he was a bigger guy, I was a smaller guy, so we had our thing down. He was the heel, I was the babyface. We could do the same match every fucking night. Like if we were doing it on a road, we could do the same fucking match every night. Nobody knew the difference, and that was just beautiful because we knew the match was good. Why not milk it? Why not get the most you can get out of it? It's the same thing with the jokes, right? Like if you have a good fucking act or a good fucking joke.
If no one, the thing about comedy now, like. Basically, TV changed comedy from the time that you're talking, like the David Brenner, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, and even before, like the Catskill vaudeville type of era. That, like before Carlin, before that era, there weren't even comedy clubs. Comics typically performed as opening acts at nightclubs for musical performers. Like you'd be at the Bottom Line in New York City. That there'd be a comic that came on for a half an hour, and then it would be, you know, whatever jazz act or blue or whatever singer or something like that. Once comedy clubs started coming around in like the early 70s, you could actually go out and see actual stand-up comedy, but it wasn't on TV much. You'd see someone on the Tonight Show, you'd see someone on Merv Griffin, you know, Jack Pars, you know, on the late night shows, but once like the 80s came around and Comedy Central and HBO started having stand-up, like you could see comedy, number one, in your town, no matter what city, there was a comedy club. And TV, I mean, once you did it, basically back in the 80s, is once you did it on TV, you were done with it because everyone back then, before like cable really, like if everyone saw your 5 minutes on the Tonight Show, like 20 million people saw it. So like, yes, you would obviously perform for an hour at a club. So the 5 minutes that you did, you could still do. But now with the internet and everything, with YouTube and like now comics, literally, if you're known, like you need to come up with a new hour like every year,
dude.
because it's right there. Like I could just I'll watch the John Mulaney special that comes out and go, this is brilliant, and then be like, well, if I'm going to see him locally and pay $60 a ticket, I hope the fuck's sake I'm not seeing the same hour that I literally just saw because I have just so much access to it. But back in the day, even when I started in like 96, 97, like most people didn't watch Comedy Central. Like it wasn't the type of thing you were. If you were a decently known enough comic, like back in New York City, then like the top comics were like Dave Attell, Jeffrey Ross, Louis C.K., Todd Barry, guys like that, yeah, they do their occasional, you know, they'd have a half an hour special on Comedy Central, but most of the audiences that came to New York City comedy clubs weren't like comedy nerds. You may have some that like, oh, okay, I remember seeing that guy, but like Dave Attell could just do the jokes that he did on, like he could do the same material that he has on his album for 5 to 7 years around the country as often as he wants in the same act.
Oh yeah.
But now we're living in it. You can't do that anymore. Like if you're the only reason that you'd be doing it is because you're not known yet. Right. Like you're just trying to perfect your act. That's why you'll see in any stage of comedy. You'll see this in music. You see this in music all the time. If you're like a music nerd, like the band's first album is like great, and then it's like, well, every album after that is not all that great, right? It's like it's good, right? If you're a fan of a band, you'll be like, oh, that first album has all the hits, and that's half the, you know, that you love everything, and then you're like, well, the next album is good, but it only has like one or two good songs, and then the next album is like, it has one or two good songs, but I mean, it's still a good band. But you don't realize that the albums after that first one, it took them 2 years to make that album, right? They had to come up with 10 songs in about 2 years.
Right.
That first album are the best songs that they came up with for like 10 to 12 years, right? They probably had tons of other songs that they played live when they were a no-name band playing in front of 60 people that are like, well, we made a couple of good songs, and then these other songs aren't that good. So they ended up making better songs. So just like in comedy, by the time you've heard of someone, then when they come out with that hour special, that first album they made, you know, they went to open mics for 5 years before they even got like got $5 for a gig. Right. Then they had to go on the road and be like a feature act for like 5 to 7 years. And they would do a half an hour in front of a headliner, and you would have no fucking clue who they were, right? And then by the time you've heard of them, they've been doing comedy for 15 years. Right. Like people like look at some of the comments and, oh, this is a new person. And it's like, no, they've been doing comedy for like 10 to 15 years. So that hour that you're seeing is like the best material of a like 10 to 15 year period. And then obviously once they're known, they have to make a whole new hour in a year.
Oh, yeah.
So you wonder why the next hour is not as good. Like, it's like, no, the first thing that you saw was like the best of his entire career up to that.
No, I get it. I get it. It makes sense. I was listening to like an interview with Kevin Hart a while ago, a long time ago, but I remember him saying that like he has a 2-year period in between his specials at this point because he needs the time. There's a whole process. He's got to like, you know what I mean? Like you said, he doesn't have the first, 15 years of his career to write these best jokes and just do a new comedy special. He's already done them. So he needs time, to develop that stuff and test it out and go on the road and all these kind of things. It makes sense. Like it's funny because obviously like television like raised the bar. Of comedy, right? Because it forced comedians to be better. It forced comedians now you have to be fucking good because you will be a one-hit wonder. You will. If you're a fraud, you will have maybe it took you 10 years to have that one good show. But if you can't cut that shit the next couple of years, like you will fade because, like you said, if I just watch the HBO special, I'm not going to a local club paying money to see you say the same fucking jokes. You're gonna say some other shit. You know what I mean? So it makes sense. But at the same time, because it raised that bar, that's why we have so many fucking funny people. We have so many people that are so funny. And like you said, like I also I just appreciate like comedy. I just like to laugh. I like to laugh, man. Like there's so much in everybody's life. Like maybe some people out there are fortunate enough where everything goes perfect in their life and whatever. But for me personally, there's so much shit in real life that's just too real, man. If I'm gonna watch something to be entertained, either give me a competition where I can really get into it, sports. Or give me something that's going to fucking make me laugh because, like, that's what I enjoy doing. That's when I feel good is when I'm laughing. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, different styles. Like you said, you may not be a huge fan of the puppeteering or whatever, the ventriloquism act. What's his name? Jeff
Dunham or someone like that.
I know who he is. I just can't remember his name. But, like, you may not be a fan of his style.
Well, even you mentioned Katt Williams. Like, I don't find Katt Williams to be funny, but he's extremely good at what he does.
Yes.
He's one of the like his style, which it's hard for me to even explain what his style is, but if you understand what he's doing, he's good. It's just a matter of just like I'm much more cerebral. Like I don't necessarily like I was never a fan of like Sam Kinison.
Right.
Or someone like the really outrageous yelling and like everything's all over the place and this fucking thing happened and that thing happened and whatever. Like I like the types of like I like Stephen Wright type of like the slow paced one liners.
Oh yeah,
like that are just like Emo Phillips. Like he also does very slow delivery and then like his punchlines are just out of nowhere.
Right.
And then I also like the Anthony Jeselnik. Like that would be a more recent, like just really fucking like everything. It's extremely offensive one-liner style, but that's his character. He develops that character, even though that's not him. Like, because he can only sell those jokes if he puts himself in the point where he's the worst human being.
Well,
you can't. Someone else couldn't tell those jokes and do well. It has.
That's
to be
exactly it. That's exactly. And again, like I at the end of the day, because I was never in the comedy business or industry. I never looked at it like, to me, I respect the art form of whatever your act is, whatever your gimmick is, whatever your character is, or whatever. Like, if you deliver it well and you make me laugh, I don't care how you make me laugh. You fucking make me laugh, then you've done your job as a comedian, right? For that night. So if I go to see Tracy Morgan, I know Tracy Morgan. I know what to expect. But, like, I always find, like, I connect with comics who usually remind me of someone that I knew when I was a kid. Like, I had a friend. You know, you always get that friend. Like Tracy Morgan reminds me of a friend. I always had a friend like him. That is kind of, even though that may not, even if that's really not Tracy Morgan, that character, like, I connect, his fucking sense of humor to me is totally different than, like, a John Mulaney. My wife is a huge John Mulaney fan. We just went and saw Mulaney and Pete Davidson live, like, I think like maybe a year ago, not even a year ago or so. It was awesome. So, like, I like those guys' humor as well. And even though them two have somewhat different styles. So to me, it's like, did you make me laugh? Like, I gotta buy what you're selling. And if John Mulaney is gonna go up there and try to say, like, Katt Williams jokes, number one, people will think he's racist because he shouldn't say that because he's white. And number two, it is not going to be delivered properly. People are going to be like, yo, that seemed awkward. That didn't seem, I don't believe that you're that person.
It doesn't fit his voice.
Right.
It doesn't fit it doesn't fit your voice. One of the things that I trouble with, I started when I was 17 doing stand-up. Okay. And, like, I like the writing aspect of stand-up. And one of the things that, and because I was young, I got, like, some agency representation and whatever. I mean, because it's a young man, like, when you're young and halfway decent, and I was in New York City, so that's like the pinnacle of I mean, I grew up in New York City, so I had no other choice than start in New York City.
I don't even know that.
Yeah, from Brooklyn.
Oh, no shit, man. Yeah. What's up? I'm in Jersey, man. You know, my family's from, you know how it is in Jersey. Everybody's family started from New York and ended up in Jersey somehow.
Right.
Didn't even know that,
right,
man.
Virgin Tunnel.
There we go. What part of Brooklyn?
Mill Basin.
Okay. My family was from Brighton. Yeah. Okay. That little pause. I didn't even realize that.
No, but I grew up but growing up doing stand-up comedy in New York City, I mean, you have to be good in order to get stage time. Like, because this isn't Topeka, Kansas, where, like, oh, you could be, better than the road hacks that would come through that, started when they were 1974 and haven't changed their acts. Like, not like a typical 9:00 show on Tuesday at the comic strip, where I'm on the schedule. Like, it's a showcase type of thing where, like, they'll have 12, 14 comics, each do like 10, 15 minutes each. But, like, it's a show where, like, I'm doing the 9:00 spot on, like, an 8:30 show. So I got, like, the third spot, but, like, I'm in between. It's like, okay, it's going to be, like, maybe another younger comic, then, like, it's Greg Fitzsimmons, and then me, and then Jeffrey Ross, and then Greg Giraldo, and then some other guy you probably never heard of, and then it's Jim Gaffigan, and then like understand the audience is seeing, like, whoever came before you. Like, that's the standard of comedy that it's going to be for the whole show. You can't just come up and be like I'm going to do 10 minutes. That's remarkably easier like not as funny comedy as, like, the guys that you see that are doing Letterman spots, that are doing Tonight Show spots. So you have to be good. So that, like, when I was 17, I didn't know any different. Yeah. So I just wrote good stand-up comedy. But the problem that I ran into was that I was 17 and I looked like I was 14.
Ah, shit. Yeah.
So, like, I was like, it already came, and my voice, my natural Brooklyn, I hung out with a lot of Irish and Italian kids. Yeah. Of course, I was in gifted programs. I was like a big math student. I was a nerd, and I followed sports. And I was in the jock crowd because I was big into stats, fantasy baseball, that type of shit. But I talked much, like, my material was more that what a 30-year-old would write. Even though on stage I came across as a 14-year-old, so a lot of times the audience has never bought it.
Yeah.
Like it came across as basically too offensive because I looked like it's the nice Jewish kid from down the street, and then all of a sudden I'm talking about blowjobs and fucking that type, and they're like, whoa.
I get it.
Like this,
they almost feel
fit.
like if they laugh, they're condoning your behavior as a 14-year-old, even though you're 17. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Even though I'm 17, I look 14.
And so they're like, no, this 14-year-old is using this. It's not funny when he says it. It's just not funny. Like when my neighbor Jimmy says it, it's hilarious. 36-year-old Jimmy. When 14-year-old Billy next says it, it's not funny. It's just like, I get it. It makes sense.
Right, but the whole point behind that is that just writing material, in and of itself, that is funny. That is well crafted. I would have other comics that like ask me to help them write material. Fix their jokes and everything, because I was just really good at joke writing. But like, I had no voice. I didn't come at 17. I didn't understand the concept of a voice. For the main reason is that I barely had any life experience to have a voice. Like, what is my experience? Like, I had agents telling me you should write about what you know, not write what's good. Like, write about what happened your first date in high school. You're like, and I looked at that, and I followed stand-up comedy. I was a comedy nerd. Like, I had all the Carlin albums. I even Dice Clay, even though he wasn't very good. But if there was a comic that had an album in the 80s or HBO special, I've seen it.
Right.
I've seen it multiple times, but I looked at it from a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm trying to not emulate them. I'm not trying to emulate Carlin, but I'm trying to be as good writer as those guys, because that's all I knew.
Yeah.
And I had all these people telling me, write what you know. It's like, I don't understand the concept of writing about what I know. I don't find it interesting to write about math class.
Yeah.
Like, what's so funny about math class? I'm going to write to me, that's not my voice. Yeah. My voice is like I typically hung out with older people. Yeah. Like I was in acting and improv, and when I was 15, I was performing with adults because I really had nothing in common with most of the kids my age.
Right.
Because I thought, I didn't care what jeans you wore and what Billy's doing to, we're all going here and going to the baseball. I don't give a shit about high school life. Like, it seems so small to me. It seems like, really? Are we caring this much about, like, who's going with who to the fucking dance?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things? I'm reading the New York Times. I'm worried about what the fuck's going on in the world. And you people, I never related to that, but it influenced my comedy, because when I'm 17 writing material, I'm writing material based on what I see in the New York Times,
right,
not what I see in there. And it just, while people laughed, I was good. People still laugh. I still did well, but not as well as I could have if I focused more on not writing good comedy, but just like finding the voice. And the problem at that age is that you just don't have where can I find it? I'm 17. How much life experience? I'm performing with 45-year-olds that have seen shit. Right? They've gone through a divorce. They had 2 kids. Yeah. They were broke. Shit's happened to them. And me, it's like, well, my dad's driving me to the comic strip tonight, and I'm gonna go up and do my 10-minute spot, and then go home and have a fucking buy me some ice cream and go to bed. Like that type of shit.
Yeah. No. I get it. I get it completely. It's like I remember having a friend. I had like a buddy who wanted to make music, and he was really good. He's really talented, really good singer, and they were good. But I think like their problem, like they could really only do covers. They couldn't write their own music, and like I'm sure now I don't even know what they do now. I don't know what they do, but it's like at that point I knew it. I'm like, bro, it's because you just haven't done shit. Like, like these guys are writing about shit because they went and done shit. Like they've experienced shit. Like, so until you get to that point, because they were all like, there was like a phase where like they didn't want to be disingenuous and like talk about things that weren't real to them. It was like around the time that like it was like that with rap, where gangster rap was like real big and shit. And I was a big rap fan growing up. And so like there was always this like, if somebody tried to rap, it was like, bro, if you're not doing that shit, you can't rap about that shit. If you're not selling drugs and and gangbanging, you can't rap about that stuff. That's disingenuous. So like, and then the long story short, people ended up having to go back to, they never got past the covers thing because they were never comfortable just writing for the sake of writing. Like, you don't have to live through this specific experience. Like, I never jumped off a mountain. It doesn't mean that if I wrote a fucking book, I couldn't have a scene where somebody jumped off a fucking mountain just because I've never experienced jumping off a mountain. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have the ability to tell that story, then tell the fucking story. But I understand that.
Well, it really depends on the expectation that you set up. So, like in comedy, I was always a slave to the material. Like I was a writer comic. I was never going to be a character. I was never going to be a personality. I am who I am, and here are my jokes. Yeah. Like that's like I typically the type of person I am would end up being a writer. Like I end up, instead of me talking to you right now, I'd be on the staff writer for Conan or something. Like there are tons of writers for shows that are really good at writing they're writing jokes. And they have no voice. They're just like, I'm just good at writing. I can write 100 jokes a day. I can't tell any of these jokes because it doesn't fit my voice, but these fit that guy's voice. This guy fit. I mean, there's tons of writers. I mean, they typically start as stand-up comics. But if you're, whatever expectation you set up, you don't have to be truthful as long as you're being consistent. Sure. Like you said about wrestling, as long as your voice is consistent with the material, it doesn't have to be true. Anytime you hear a comic say the words, just the other day, it never happened just the other day. Right. They've been saying, you watched that, right? Oh, last night I ran into, like, no, they're just saying that because it makes the audience feel like it's more on the spot, and it fits in that way. But like, I could do a joke about things that I have no experience with if I could write the joke well. The problem is that if you're going to do a half an hour of material, they all have to fit together within the voice. You can't be like a nice person in the beginning and then say something that makes you out to be the biggest asshole later, because it doesn't go together. Right. Or if you set yourself up as a personality, like Stephen Wright, who did very deadpan one-liner type jokes, like can't just all of a sudden become Dane Cook. I mean, like it just wouldn't match. Like whatever Dane Cook's best bit is, Stephen Wright could never do, no matter how well written. And then vice versa is in the same way, that you can't have, one, all of a sudden a big a storyteller comic starts having a period of 5 minutes worth of witty, punny one-liners. It's like it doesn't make sense. It's not consistent. So you don't have to tell the truth in your comedy act. It has to be consistent with the voice and the rest of your act. And the thing that I struggled with in my comedy career was that I never really developed a voice other than I'm from New York and here are my jokes. And that's just, and yes, some people would go like, okay, they're always going to be clever. They're going to be a little raunchy, a little clever, very sarcastic. Like the style of joke would be consistent, but the topics, like I had no, like if you say, okay, what's my point of view? They go, I don't have a point. Like, I'm not pissed off at everything. Like there's no, like, what sitcom would you be on? Like nothing. There would be no, like, what would my show be based around other than just, I'm just who I am. Yeah. But that's a very big thing when it comes to, I'm not saying just for getting a show like that, but also in stand-up comedy where, like, you say Patton Oswalt, and, like, I don't expect Patton Oswalt to be telling me one-liners. Like, all you have to do is tell me a comic and show me material. Like, you show me a list of 10 comics and then give me 10 bits. Like, if you're a good comic and you have a voice, I should be able to listen to all 10 bits and be able to match them to all 10 comics. Right. It's not like, oh, the good writer. Like, there's no such thing in style as the good writer guy. It has to be about something. Yeah. Dave Chappelle is different than Chris Rock, right? Is different than Sarah Silverman, which is different than Dave Attell, and different. I mean, I could identify if they all wrote new material. I could easily identify whose bit is who.
Right.
But that's the voice, and the same thing probably in wrestling, where if you put a bag over someone's head, obviously with height and you'd be able to tell. But let's say if there was a way for me to not be able to see the wrestler and just show me all the moves and show me the sequence of the match, and it's obviously a more famous wrestler, like someone historical,
of course,
or something like
figure
that.
out who it is.
Like I could totally tell the difference between a Shawn Michaels match and a match with The Rock.
Right.
Like I could, like you tell me it's Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart, and then you tell me it's The Rock versus Undertaker. I don't have to see. Just all you have to do is write a text sequence of the description of that match, and I'd be able to obviously tell the difference between the two.
Right.
Between those because you have to know. But if you just random person, like there were tons of the jobber wrestlers or the lower end wrestlers where it's like Animal Hawk or whatever. Like what's his thing? I don't know. Like what would, like I wouldn't be able to recognize a match. Eddie Guerrero I can, but like just random wrestler X, it would just be like, okay, this could be like anyone.
Well, it's interesting because like you say that your biggest, what you believe was held you back when you were in the midst of your comedy career was not having a voice, and that was my same issue with wrestling. There's what I liked about wrestling was the athletic portion of it. I liked making people believe it was real. I never liked the funky characters. I never liked the gimmicky stuff. I didn't like it. I was like, I don't believe this shit. Like, I'm not really, I just want to see the guys go out there and wrestle. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because what you get into a business for because you enjoy doesn't always, like, if it doesn't match up with what's the most popular, then you may not ultimately be able to reach your goals unless you're willing to switch your style. It's like going back to music again, right? You stick to your style, you go pop. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that was my biggest problem. I didn't really have a character. I kind of fell into a pretty boy role because I was a young dude in shape with a tan and long hair and all. You know what I'm saying? I kind of fell into that and just kind of went with it.
Right, but probably in while you were wrestling throughout the country, there were probably 20 pretty boys.
Yes.
That with that you
doing
a dime
the same
a dozen.
shit.
Like if
I fall down tomorrow and there's something, no matter how good I was, so is he. He could do the same shit I could do. You could throw a mean super kick, so can he.
Right, and you're both talented.
Exactly.
People would look and go, this person knows what they're. Right. I mean, they would respect your wrestling and be like, you're really good,
yes.
but like. No one's buying your T-shirt. Yes,
that's exactly it. They're not buying a T-shirt because they don't know what the T-shirt means. They're like, okay, well, he's a really good wrestler.
You don't have a catchphrase.
That's not.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And like you'll find the people who are maybe less talented and focus more on their character, which is not, again, I didn't like that part of wrestling. Like I like The Rock. The Rock is not nearly. I love The Rock as a person. I think I like what he does, his movies. I like The Rock as a guy. He's a dude that I would like to hang out with, man. He seems like a really cool dude, funny guy, got his shit together. But when it comes to wrestling, there's no comparison. Like Shawn Michaels to me is way more appealing of a wrestler in his style of matches than The Rock. Because The Rock was the same shit, right? Same thing with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Same thing. I didn't watch wrestling for those guys. I like guys like Shawn Michaels who can actually do cool shit when he's in the ring. And when he gets punched or when he takes a bump, looks like he was literally knocked out unconscious. Like, he looks like he broke in half when he took that bump. Like, you know what I mean? But that doesn't always match up. And that era of Shawn Michaels, it worked out. But clearly, The Rock, Stone Cold, and like they're great workers. I'm not taking anything away from their, but there's a difference between wrestlers and workers. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. They were great workers. Shawn Michaels was a good wrestler. Both, he could work. But really, it wasn't really Shawn Michaels' character that I think made him a ton of money. I think it was just his look in combination with his actual matches. He had really good matches. He was doing shit people couldn't do. Like you said, Michaels was one of the first ones in the wrestling business that, like, when Hulk Hogan hits you with that fucking big boot, it's over. It's over. With Michaels, his matches were one of the first ones that didn't mean it was over, right? In that Iron Man match with Bret Hart, and then he hit him with a super kick, it wasn't necessarily over. He got the sharpshooter. It wasn't necessarily over. It was just like, holy shit, what's going on? It's not over. Like Hulk Hogan, it was always over with the leg. This is never over. Like, you know what I mean? It was just, again, catching him off guard, making him think something didn't happen. But in the comedy world, where I'm coming back with it, is, do you believe that you could have had more, not define successful, depending on what you believe is successful, but I guess like financial or I guess getting more like notoriety, had you kind of sold out and developed that character and made it less about the writing, which is why you got into it, right? That's why you fell in love with comedy. It was the writing of it, the art of it. It wasn't the character, the gimmick. You can respect the gimmicks, but you see what I'm saying? Like a Tracy Morgan.
But they're not gimmicks in conceit. I think you're getting a little wrestling. I think in wrestling, there's a very pronounced divide between the two.
Right.
At least for a lot of wrestlers.
Right.
I think Shawn Michaels has a gimmick too. I think Bret the Hitman Hart has a gimmick too. It's more that's why, like, during that time I didn't like characters like Papa Shango.
Yeah.
I didn't like even the Undertaker, which is like I loved, like when I was younger when I was like in I loved his entrance music, but like I don't believe that guy's a fucking Undertaker. I mean, I don't believe this. Like you understand what I'm saying? I didn't like the characters that are like Kane. He came from hell. Like, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
He's
just a big motherfucker. That's all. He's just a big motherfucker.
Right. Like, but I didn't mind the characters like Ted DiBiase, which, like, okay, the $1 million, he's just a rich guy.
He's a rich guy.
But but Erwin R. Shyster, it's like, come on, really? His character is the tax, and he does his taxes. Why can't he just be a regular guy? Why can't he be why can't it be Dean Malenko or Chris Benoit or like I liked the guys that were just guys,
right?
Just like, but like Rob Van Dam sold T-shirts, and he didn't have a gimmick. He really didn't have. What was his gimmick? There was no gimmick there.
Right. But right? There was a uniqueness. The reason Rob Van Dam is right?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to explain. Is that Rob Van Dam didn't like sell out and go, oh, I'm going to create this gimmick character. He just he put who he was into his wrestling.
Right, but so again, what I'm talking about is like people who are like, so like there's people that were like me in wrestling, right? And like you said, a dime a dozen. There's not a dime a dozen Rob Van Dams. He does unique things that people on an athletic basis couldn't do. You know what I mean? Like he could do things in that ring that human beings couldn't fucking do. He was just so athletic. So even for him, he was able to lean on that athleticism and be himself, who's basically just a fucking hippie. A martial arts hippie is basically what I always got from him as a character. But he was able to lean on that. He was able to lean on the fact of like, I don't have to be this crazy, outlandish. Because, right, he just seems like a stoner hippie dude. He's very quiet. He's never really been a super outspoken guy. Even his Rob Van Dam thing, you ever notice? Like, he don't ever have to fucking say anything because he gets the crowd to say it for him. He just fucking does this. That's all he does. You know what I mean? He's gonna go.
But the fact that once you do this, you think Rob Van Dam.
Of course, but he doesn't have to be that corny ass, like, come on. That's what, you know what I mean?
Well, that's you're making my point for me. You're making my point for me. Like he started from a technical perspective and then built a character who he didn't say, I'm going to be this character. He just said, I'm going to just be more of who I am. And it ends up being this. And the crowd got bought into him.
Yes.
He didn't have to.
I agree.
He didn't have to create something from scratch and say, I'm gonna be this guy. I'm gonna be that. He just was him, and then he had enough skill to his personality. Yes. That's what I'm saying about comedy. That Katt Williams is him. He's not an act.
Yes.
Like Katt Williams on stage is off stage. The exaggerated version is on stage, but off stage, he's just like that. Dave Chappelle on stage is an slightly exaggerated version of himself off stage. Right. But Larry the Cable Guy is a character.
Yes.
Like that's not him. That is a character. Louis C.K. on stage is the same off stage. Like you're taking the technical talent and then just I'm gonna go on stage and I'm gonna make the audience believe in this character who is me, not putting on a superhero cape like in wrestling, not like creating characters, the bushwhackers or the head shrinkers and like those type of tag teams. Well, they're Kamala, right? Like really. Obviously, it's not. Obviously, that's a guy pretending to be an Africa guy from Africa.
Yeah.
Right?
Kamala loves Arby's, by the way.
You don't have to do that. What?
Kamala loves Arby's, by the way. Arby's, obsessed, obsessed.
But you understand the difference of like you could still be Kamala you could still be that same wrestler, but instead of putting on the face paint and pretending that you don't understand English and you're from Africa,
sure,
you could just be tell your story in the ring that the audience buys who you are as just who you are, and then the t-shirts and the mic tech and all the catchphrase will just come from it. And obviously, it's the hardest thing to do. That's why only 1% can do that.
The reason, like for me in wrestling, what I found was that the people who tried to do it that way, and listen, a lot of this has to do with talent also, right? Some guys aren't talented. So no matter whether you're being yourself or not, if you're not talented, you're not talented, right? There's just some people that are like that. Then there's a bunch of people who are more talented, and you're starting to see some of these guys pop up in like AEW and in Japan and all this kind of stuff. Guys that are like the AJ Styles, like and those kind of people. It took those kind of people so long to get up to the WWE because they refused to kind of just sell out and be like a gimmick, like the WWF traditional Papa Shangos and crazy motherfuckers that they used to want you to believe these people were like. And so they had to grind it and it's great, but there's tons of people like them. Those were just the best of the best that made it. The people, it seems like the people who are most like characters, at least appear that way, are the ones that people feel like can't be replicated. You know what I'm saying? Like David Tell, and they're like you said with the New York scene. There's a ton of them, and for the most part, everybody's style, I would imagine, because when I watch some of these guys, when I watch the same, balding white comedians from the Northeast nowadays, whether it's David Tell or a bunch of these guys, and they're great, man. I listen to all their shit when I see it, but to me, it's like I don't necessarily put one in front of the other. Because they're funny, but they have very similar deliveries, minus what you said. They all are specific, right? Obviously, Louis C.K. has his personality. David Tell has his personality. But in general, they're giving you the same type of thing. Whereas if I watch like a Tracy Morgan, even if that's really him, which I believe it is to an extent, like you said, an exaggerated version, that comes off to me like a character. So if you're a comedian like Larry the Cable Guy, and you're able to just become a character for the sake of being successful. You know what I mean? Is that something that but at the same time, I almost feel like if you do that, and that was my problem with wrestling, with developing a real gimmick, was I didn't want to be that. That's not what I liked about wrestling. I like the technical parts of it. That's where I wanted to put my energy into. I didn't want to put you know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be, because there were several times where people said things to me oh, you should be like the next great Muta. Paint your face, get the green mist, spit it out, all that kind of shit. Playing on the fact that, and some people can tell I'm Korean, some people can't. But the people that can tell, they just look at me and see an Asian person, which is mind-boggling to me because I don't even think I look that Asian. But people would look at, just paint you could be the next Ray Muta, paint your face and all this kind of shit. And I'd be like, I didn't want to do it because I'm like, bro, I wanted to be more of a character that reflected my own personality. And the pretty boy thing just kind of fell because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't making a move. So then the crowd kind of picked one for me. Well, you look kind of like this, so we're just gonna assume you're like this. You know what I mean? And then it's at that point.
Yeah, but sometimes that's up to you though. Sometimes you have to take the leap and go. I'm gonna bet on myself in this. I'm gonna make a decision. I mean, it's the same way at 6:59 at a 7:00 NBA lock. You have to go whether or not you're going to play AD on FanDuel, even though he's questionable, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the late game, you have to make that decision and go, fuck it.
You go and do it, and every time I would come out of a match, every time afterwards, whether it's signing autographs or whatever, every time after a match, people say the same shit. Man, you are the best, man. Your match was the best. Your match was the best. But I was never the guy that they talked about later. I was the guy they talked about that night. Not the guy they told their friend about next week, because they told their friend about Giggly Magoo, who came out in a fucking dumpster truck, you know what I'm saying? Doing his little thing. Even though all he did was a punch and a kick, they remembered the character, and that's what they wanted to tell their friend about. Not the dude who went out there and took 4 German suplexes through a chair, because nowadays everybody does that. So, when I come in next week, filler A guy in tights will do the same exact thing. But being that guy that's able to have that character and stand out more, he's not in wrestling for the reason I wanted to get into wrestling. And I would think it's almost the same thing. I'm not saying Larry the Cable Guy is not funny. I'm not saying he needed to do that character to be funny. But by him doing that, I do think it made it easier for people to, it made it easier for him to get talked about. Because, he's not like a regular guy. You know, a lot of comedians come off to me like this intelligent, regular people who are funny. You know, like fucking, like, especially the New York guys.
Because that's what they are. I mean,
right?
Right. That's 99.9% of stand-up comedy.
So what's the difference then if they're all similar styles in New York? The difference of me, I'm gonna go to the local comedy club because I know what to expect there. No matter who's there, I know what to expect. I know what kind of comedians they bring in. I know what to expect. Or do I want to go see this guy because that's the only place I can go to see him? That's the only way I'm gonna get that kind of comedy, that character's comedy, is by going to that guy because I remembered him. And he's different than all these other New York guys I go to. So there could be a New Yorker who's the same.
New York guys are different from each other. They're all different from each other.
Of course, but
you have to develop that over time.
Yes, no, absolutely.
I remember like Bill Burr is one of my favorite comics. I knew him when I was 17. I mean, he was doing the same shows as me when I was 17 in New York City. Bill Burr's like Bill Burr. Do you know Judah Friedlander?
I don't know Judah.
World champion hat. Glassy. He was on 30 Rock.
Oh, yes.
Brunch guy, world champion hat.
He's got the hanging out of the hat.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Right. You know Zach Galifianakis.
Yes.
Right. Okay. These are people that I regularly did. Like, we were in the same like level of comedy. I mean, like literally the same level of comedy. Like we were doing the same types of spots. No one knew who we were. Right. Their comedy back then is nothing like it is now. Right. Nothing. Zach Galifianakis was a thin guy that didn't play the piano, didn't appear awkward. He did normal stuff. If you saw him when 1996, he was generic New York comic. Right. He was just like, nothing would stand out whatsoever. Judah Friedlander, he still looked like that, but he just did normal. He wrote jokes. I mean, Judah always looked like that, but he didn't have that arrogant style of like I'm the best. So that's your question.
When do you think it changed for like Zach Galifianakis? When did he start?
It's not a switch. See, you're talking about wrestling like it's a switch. In comedy, it's not. It's someone that's finding their voice, and it comes over a long period of time. Bill Burr, when I was 17, 18 years old. If you would have saw Bill Burr back then, you would have gone, okay, it's a redheaded, angry New Yorker doing jokes about observational jokes. But like you said, there were 20 guys like that. It was the generic white guy New Yorker doing whatever. But Bill Burr now, I could tell a Bill Burr bit immediately. I could tell. I know his voice. You could write out a bit, and I could know. Yeah, fucking this and fucking that and this guy and but that. But back 20 years ago, it's had to start from somewhere. He didn't have a voice back then. Now he developed that over time. So like all these guys, Aziz, me and Aziz took the train all the time. Aziz back when I was 23, because he was in NYU, so I was actually older than him. Like he did political comedy. I mean, he was doing like I remember he opened with his normal opener was because he's Indian and from South Carolina, right. And most of his act was about him being like him being from South Carolina like that. It's like he said when he grew up, I'm paraphrasing his joke. It's like when he grew up, he was known as the guys from 7-Eleven, and now we're known as the guys from 9/11.
Oh, God.
Like he did some type of joke like that because it was like 2003, right? Because he comes across as an addict, right?
Yeah, playing into it,
and it's a nice clever joke, 7-Eleven to 9/11. Yeah. But like that joke has no voice to it.
Right.
Like that joke could be told by any dark Middle Eastern comedian. Like anyone, like that's not an Aziz Ansari joke. That's just Russell Peters could have said that joke. Anyone could have said that joke. He developed material where now when you watch his special on Netflix, you go, I'm watching Aziz.
Right.
But I knew him before he had a voice. I knew a lot. I knew Jim Gaffigan before he had before Hot Pockets, before any. That's when he was doing comedy in 1997. I was doing spots. He was generic New York. Of course, he comes from Indiana, so he has like a very natural, friendly charm to him. But like he was just like, I couldn't pick out a Jim Gaffigan bit.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, he was a very good comic. I thought he was a good comic. I watched him and, do his act. I'm a good joke writer. But like now, you watch his, I know Jim Gaffigan jokes. I know, he had to develop that, like, he talks as part of the crowd. Oh, this guy is whatever, like he acts as like the crowd talking back to. That's something that he didn't just sit down one day and go, I'm going to decide to do that. It's something that when you're doing spots in New York, you're doing 3 or 4 spots a night, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. And you're not just doing your same act every 10 minutes, every 15-minute spot. I'm going to try this out. I'm going to try that out. I'm going to try this out. I've seen Jeffrey Ross do guitar songs for a while. You never think of Jeffrey Ross. Jeffrey Ross is the roast guy.
Yeah.
Back then in New York, he was the poetry guy. Because if you remember on Comedy Central, he used to do these little like poems and in the commercial breaks. So he was known as the guy that writes those little poems on Comedy Central. You would have never thought that. Now,
right.
He's the guy that does all the roast because but even back then, he was just a very good joke writer. He wrote one-liner type jokes, and that was his whole act. But no one said, I want to go see Jeffrey Ross, because although every comic he would kill, but it's 15 minutes of like no joke. I mean, there's no personality behind it. It's just very good. It's just New York. Yeah. He's generic New Yorker telling generic New Yorker jokes, really good ones. But then you would never tell your friend about it. You're just like, this guy, like, what's his name? I forgot. Jeff Ross. Like, obviously, with his name, it's like Jeff Ross. Very generic in and of itself.
Yeah, it could be.
He had to develop that style of like, I'm gonna be more roasty, more. He started picking on the crowd more.
Yes.
But that's not something that he didn't just snap his fingers and say, I'm gonna be Papa Shango.
Of course.
He didn't. I'm gonna. Right. It's something.
Of course.
Takes you 8-10 years over time.
Yes, and I agree. And to that same stigma, like it's the same thing. Like it's like say like I started wrestling when I was say 16, and I was finished with it by the time I was 24, 25, and it was an injuries were just like eventually just how many shoulder surgeries, and it's just like all right, I got to switch what I'm doing. But and before that, it's like when you're doing it, you're sitting here and you're busting your ass every single day. And if you in wrestling, you're relying on your body physically, right? You need your body to look a certain way if you want to play a certain character. You just need certain things to kind of fall in your favor, and you're relying on a lot of pieces. And in my situation, my body eventually just gave out and was like, no, you're not cut out. You're not sturdy enough to you know what I'm saying? Like you're not sturdy enough to handle something like this. And so my thought was always like, man, like, so I got into wrestling because I loved the art of wrestling and the actual physical part of wrestling. My body didn't cooperate. But I could have gone in there more as a character if my main goal was, no, I don't care about the art of wrestling. I just want to be a fucking WWE wrestler because they get money and they're famous and people love them and I'm going to get all the girls. And, whatever's going on in your mind at the time when you're like a young kid thinking of like, I want to be a wrestler, the different things. Like you really have to make a decision. Do you like wrestling for the sake of being a wrestler? Because if that's the case, you're going to keep grinding it out. And in comedy, you're like, obviously you need to be healthy, but you're not relying on your body physically. If you get a shoulder surgery, you can come out tomorrow in a sling and still do your act, right? Like you're not on the shelf or
you're still relying on your mind.
Of course.
You still have the right material.
Of course. You're still relying on something, but like, that's my point. Relying on the mind is obviously, for most people, I would think, more stable for some people than relying on the body, right? Because the body gives out as only so much you could do. You could work out, but if your body's not meant for it, it's not meant for it. Your mind, like even if your body fails you, you still hopefully have your mind in that situation. So if I had shoulder surgery, like, if you and I both injured our shoulders, we both had a shoulder surgery. I can't do what I do for 6 months. You can still do what you do tomorrow. Like, as soon as you're out of the hospital, you can at least think of jokes and start writing material. And, even in wrestling, you could write spots, but without physically being able to try them out, you have no idea what the timing is going to be like. It's like, you literally are just wasting chunks of time. You know what I'm saying? So I think but I agree with you in that if people were able to wait it out and really develop that, because like when you don't have a character, a lot of times going back to when you were 17 and having to write about things that, like they were like write about like real stuff that you're going through. And you're like, what the fuck am I going through? I'm 17 years old, dude. Like, I'm not married. I'm not,
nothing. Right. I'm just kind of like, I was writing about stuff I was watching. I'm like, oh, that's a stupid commercial. I'm gonna make fun of it.
Right.
Like I was an observational. Like I had nothing, no experience, no nothing to write. So I'm just I'm writing material that on paper I could give to a 40-year-old comic, New Yorker style comic, and they could do it, and it would work.
Yes.
Like that. But that's all I knew about stand-up comedy. I mean, I didn't. People telling me like you're a great writer, you're a great comic, you don't have a voice, you're not really going to go far without like no one's going to be interested in wanting to see you.
Yeah.
They can't build a show around you. There's no. So I'm like I don't like I just don't know any better. It's just like I'm just going to write good shit, and if it ends up becoming a voice, then it becomes a voice. But most comics would agree, like most stand-up comics would agree that the decision, the evolution of when they started to getting their voice is not something you can do intentionally. It's something that comes through experience and allowing it to happen. Like one of the, I remember one comic headliner when I was working with them said to me that the sign of a brave comic is someone that's willing to write the best joke they've ever written and throw it out because it doesn't fit them. Like that's the bravest, because stand-up comedy is primarily about the writing, primarily about writing a great. It's just like a symphony, just like it's an art form. I'm gonna like a cook, like a chef. Like this is gonna be the greatest. This is gonna be the greatest fucking Korean dumpling or some bullshit. And then you'd be like, well, what? That's not Gordon Ramsay. Like, why the fuck are you making dumplings?
Right.
Like that's not what you're known. Like it's that type of thing where you have the ability to write a great joke and then go, while it is a great joke, that this does not fit my voice enough that I should be telling it on stage and willing to leave it in your notebook or obviously just giving it to someone else.
Yes.
And that's what that's what typically those types of comics end up becoming writers.
Yes.
End up writing for Chris Rock. So like I could write like there are people that are just skillful at doing that. I would write jokes when I was 17, 18 years old that I knew I couldn't pull off. I had one bit about redoing game shows based on like ethnicities.
Yeah.
I know it sounds hacky, but it was really clever.
Yeah.
I did it a couple of times. It only got groans because I couldn't. If it was a Puerto Rican comic or like a Hispanic comic or black comic that did this, it would have killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just something of like, I could get away with the Italian.
Oh yeah.
I could get away with the Irish. I can't get away with Puerto Rican. I can't
get
away with
you can't.
anything outside of that coming across as what then looked like a 14 or 15-year-old redheaded Jewish, right? Like it doesn't matter how good the joke is written.
Yeah.
It just no one buys it.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't be coming out of your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yet if someone else did it, like I actually gave the joke to another Puerto Rican comic.
Yeah.
And I don't know whatever happened. It's like you do it because the guy said that's a great joke. It's just no one's gonna buy it. No one's gonna buy that joke.
No.
It's gonna come across as very offensive.
Well, that's
even though it's extremely clever.
That's a big part of like any industry. I think is like you said, like being able to. You have to make a decision when you get into the business. Like there's some wrestlers that I would know that were young. And they had all the tools. They were similar to me, right? Similar, like just another generic, like good wrestler, not really a gimmick, but good wrestler, missing the character part, but good wrestler. Got the look, just not really sure what to do with him. If the WWE were to pick him, they could mold him into something, he'd be fine, right? But there's a ton of us. So how do one of us get the opportunity? What's going to make, you got to stand out. They're going to pick the one that stands out still. You know what I'm saying? So I'll see guys come in, and that's really their biggest thing is like, maybe in their mind growing up, they wanted to be Shawn Michaels. You know, they wanted to be the guy coming out with the long hair and like, you know, doing super kicks and doing backflips. But their personality or their look wasn't It was more of, I don't know, the fucking Undertaker. Just a big fucking, like, scary looking dude. It's like, dude, it's impressive you can do a backflip as a 300-pound guy, but it's not believable. Why the fuck, if a 300-pound guy was in a fight, why in the fuck would he want to go to the top rope? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a good chance whoever he's wrestling, he's got like a 150-pound advantage over. Like, why the fuck would he want to go to the top? You know what I'm saying? So, like, that person, if they want to just know I'm doing this because I love the business and I grew up wanting to be this character, then fuck it. Go to the top rope as much as you want. Be Shawn Michaels, even though you're fat or whatever. I don't care. But if you want to make money in this business, if you want to be successful with the tools you were given from powers that are beyond your control, genetics, maybe, then you got to suck it up and you got to be Earthquake, the next Earthquake. You remember that fucking guy, the big Earthquake back in the day?
Yeah, of course. And Typhoon,
fuck yeah.
I know.
If that's what you look like, that's what you got to be. Nobody gives a damn if you could do a fucking backflip, dude. You know what I'm saying? And that's with any industry.
But I think that I think there's a difference. I think wrestling is probably equatable. That, just like I said before, that out of every one stand-up comic that you know, there are 50 other professionals that you'd never heard of. That there's a business, for instance, in being like, you don't have to be. I know plenty of comics now that like there's college gigs, there's corporate gigs, there's now with the now there's writing, there's like you could be like even generic wrestler, like you'll never, people won't buy your t-shirt.
Oh yeah, you want to work the indies and make a living,
but you could make a living. Still be the guy that loses to the other guy,
you
right?
Could make a living.
You could still be the jobber. I know that sounds like I trained all this time to be a 20-year veteran jobber, but it's like,
but if you love the business that much,
I mean,
if you love doing it that much,
right, it pays the bills.
Then it's okay. But if you want to be
right,
but again, like if your goal, again, that's when I get back to like define success. Because if your goal is just, my goal is just to make a living, like even for DFS, going back to DFS, if my goal is to make a living as a DFS player, and I seem to be better at cash games, but I really want to be a TPP player because it's flashy and like people have screenshots all the time of like 50 grand. It's like if my definition of success is to be like surviving and just not make a living off it, but just surviving, then I'll keep playing tournaments and just keep working on it, right? But if my goal is to know the goal of this is to be fucking successful, my goal is to like not have another job, then I better suck it up and play what I'm good at and continue to get good at that, because that's my goal, is to be successful. That's my quickest way to get there. So I guess in the end, really, right, like it defines success for you individually. Because if you just want to...
Right. I always just define success, even in stand-up comedy, was, can I pay my rent doing this? Yeah. Like I would love the HBO special. I would love sell out a theater. I would love all that type of, all I cared about is like, I did computer work. I did web development. I worked on Wall Street. I'd dress on a fucking business casual or a suit. I didn't want to do any of that shit. But that's the only, that stand-up comedy didn't pay the bills or anything. When I was 20, you'd make like $4,000 a year. Yeah. And that still puts you above 98% of comics, in New York City. But then that's why I moved out to Louisville. I did the road more. I was getting paid, $400, $500 a week on the road, traveling between, Comedy Zone this and Funny Bone and, all those types of clubs as a feature act, which is not even the headliner, the guy that comes on before the headliner guy. And I was able to pay my bill. I mean, I did web development work on the side because I could do that from my motel room. I could do, if I'm in fucking Birmingham, Alabama, like I only have to perform from like 8 to 10, but I have the rest of the day, so I could do freelance web design work and, take contracts out and do that in my hotel room. But like, that was to me, that's not failing at stand-up comedy. That's successful. You've succeeded more than 99% of people that have ever tried stand-up comedy.
Oh yeah.
And like, I'll do this gig, come back. Can I pay the rent? Can I eat? Can I sustain myself? Absolutely. So to me, that's a success. And I view that in everything in DFS. I'm extremely conservative with my bankroll. I don't play live finals or like qualifiers or anything, unless it's like severe overlay or something like that once in a while. Take a shot on some like low $100, a $300, $325 qualifier, and it's a mega qualifier. So there's 5 spots out of like 200, and it's only like it's 5 minutes to lock, and there's like 154 in. I'd be like, okay, this is going to be overlaid. I'll give it a shot. But other than that, I look at the live finals and go, I don't care about the experience. And you have to pay. You have to pay for it, because the thing is, you get taxed on it. Right. The live final seat is a $25,000 ticket, but it's valued at $60,000. So it's like the other $35,000, which is the experience, right? I have to pay fucking $10,000 in tax just on that. Right. Because that's the value of the prize package. And then I'm going to go. And yes, it's great. It's an experience. I went to the last 2 years ago, the baseball one, because I was part of the players committee. So they had our meeting. So we were all in, not to play in it, just to be there. And I look around and I'm like, we're at Chelsea Piers. Extremely expensive place to rent out. People, bow ties, giving out whatever. David Wells is signing autographs, which is, great. David, I knew him from the Yankees and the Blue Jays. But it's like, this could be done from a fucking Ramada for all I care. Why am I paying $35,000 for this? Like, I'm just viewing it as like, I don't need this to think that I'm successful. Like, just give me the money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like if you're from Toe Poker, rounders. Like, I'm Joey Knish.
Yeah.
Like, just give me the goddamn money. I don't need the bright lights. I don't need the everything. And it's perfectly fine for people that want to pursue that. And they're great people that play that, but I don't define my success by live final experiences. I don't even fucking play. I define my success by, at the end of the year, I look and I go, okay. At the end of the year, I look at my 1099. And I go from DraftKings and FanDuel. I play 99% on DraftKings. And I go, could I have made that money sitting at a desk doing computer work that I hate? And if the answer is yeah, if the answer is like that's the same amount of money, and now I'm just playing DFS and not doing the computer work, it's a success. That to me, that it doesn't have to show $600,000.
Yeah.
Just $50,000, $60,000. I live in Louisville. It's not even expensive to live here.
Yeah.
So it's not even like New York. I could make $40,000 a year playing DFS and not have to. All my expenses are paid. Yeah. So, to me, that's successful. Just like in comedy, can I pay my rent? And no one knows who I am. Yet I'm touring around the country for several years. Working 40 weeks out of the year, doing some colleges, doing some corporate work. Whatever. Like, why do I care that like some fucking douchebag could come up to me and go, "Oh, you do stand up comedy, never heard of you." It's like, who gives a shit? Yeah. Like my paycheck's hurt. I get to travel and get to sleep late, and I don't have to fucking do anything else. Yeah. So like, sick. Just like in wrestling, there are probably plenty of people that have no problem. Like, if you view that as success, I think most people, a lot of people, maybe not most people, many people, get disillusioned because they're aiming for the 1% outcome. Yeah. It's like they're trying to find the 1% guy that hits 3 home runs instead of just fucking playing Mike Trout.
Yeah.
Like yeah, but anyone can play Mike Trout. It's like, yeah, but you're not going to be known as the guy that picks out the 1% own guys, but you're probably going to make more money than
goes back to
guys that fly.
It goes back to exactly what we were just saying before about how people sometimes don't want to accept, like, they want to do things the way they want to do them. Like, if your goal is to be successful,
you don't have a right to that.
Right.
What?
Agreed.
You imagine starting training and going, the only way that I define success is if I become The Rock.
Dude, yeah.
That you have no shot. But, like, what I understand dreams. If it ends up happening, it happens. Yeah. But you got to shoot, at least for your version of success. Yeah. There's a wild success, sure. But if your success is day one in wrestling training is to be The Rock, I don't see how you could ever be successful, because you'll never do the work it takes. Yeah. To be the grind.
Oh, yeah.
Because the only way to become The Rock is to be the grinder first and then make the leap. And everyone wants to go from I learned how to do a fucking chokehold to I'm going to do a fucking stone cold stunner, and why aren't I successful?
Yeah,
and it's like,
dude,
champ. You didn't put the work in.
Yeah.
All these guys, even the guys that you say that are like, The Rock and Stone Cold and The Undertaker, like, they still had to put the work in.
Oh, yeah, well, no doubt. No doubt.
Just like in stand-up comedy, where the guy that that you have the Netflix special, you don't realize he's been doing comedy for 15 years. You just heard of him now, right?
No, of course.
But he had to put in work to get to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My only point, though, is, like, there's guys like, say, like CM Punk's path to the top was harder than, I'm trying to think of a guy that, like, I'm just brain dead, but there's like then a guy that just got signed out the gate straight to WWE, didn't have to work the indies, didn't have to do shit because he had a look about him.
Brock Lesnar.
And listen, I'm not saying, because like he works hard obviously in his physique, he puts the work into him, to his body. So like regardless of whether he could wrestle at the gate or not, he looked like a motherfucker, and it was hard work to look like that motherfucker. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? But there are some dudes who came straight in and they just like, I'm not saying they didn't work hard, but you can't tell me they didn't work harder than a guy like, it's the same thing with comedy. I guess the best way to equate it is, say a guy like you guys know as comedians, you could recognize when somebody is like funny because they're genuinely funny, or if they're funny because their delivery is just really good. The character, like, and sometimes it's kind of born into that. No?
I don't think they go. I think you're making you still have to write well. There's no such thing in stand-up comedy as someone coming out of the blue and
but do you
without
think,
being
like, but again like
without writing well?
Oh no, of course, but again, like, when you say writing well, it also goes back to certain people can say certain jokes that maybe are a little easier to come up with, and they can say those jokes and get away with those jokes, and certain people can't because it doesn't fit them. It doesn't fit their voice.
Right, but they still have to be good.
They still got to be good, but they have to be good differently, right? Like you might have to be better because you look like every other fucking New York comedian. This guy already has this different thing down, so all he has to do is kill that delivery. Isn't there like a?
It's not.
No. See, in wrestling, that's a thing, right? Some guys are just like, oh, he's fucking 6'6" and he's 250 pounds. I'm only 5'11", 6 feet. I can't make myself taller. You know what I'm saying? So it's like in wrestling.
Yeah, but in comedy is much, because comedy, that doesn't matter. Right. Like the attributes like that don't matter as much. Right. You could have. There are plenty of people I would say there are more people in real life that are funny that then do stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. But the biggest mistake, the biggest misnomer, you see this at open mics all the time. This is classic stand-up comedy. The quote, I think it's a Woody Allen quote, maybe. I used to say it, but it's not mine. That the funny guy from The Office, like your funny friend is funny, but can he be funny at 8:07 p.m.? Right. Like there's a difference. Yeah, like you said with the red, like, oh, he's 6'6" and 250 or whatever. It's like, well, can he take this shot off the top? Like at some point he still needs to make a wrestling move, sure. So he can't just show up. So at he may have limited technical wrestling ability, but he still needs to have some wrestling. Yeah, so he still needs to train to be a wrestler. So in stand-up comedy, you can't just walk some person off the street who's the funniest guy. In my group of friends, I'm funny because we see this at open mics. They're the funny friend that gets a little drunk and says, "I'm going to go down to the open mic and make people laugh without having any material." But they're just going up on stage.
I guess my question:
they never do well. These people never do well because you have to have material.
Oh, yes, but I guess my question, like, there's never been a comedian that you, as a comedian, there's never been a guy who got their own special that you just felt like that guy's not actually that funny. He's just like,
oh, there are plenty of people that are not funny.
But he's just a character, and so the path for him to have his own special was better. It was like a little more clear, a little more. It was easier than like a guy like you who maybe had to fucking grind it on the indies or whatever, on the road.
No, because they still have to do stand up.
Right? No, of course.
Like I said, there are most stand up comics I don't find funny.
But say you do stand up and it's the difference of HBO. Like, this guy has to have a special, but it's not because his jokes are better than yours. You know what I'm saying? It's because
but he's a better performer. He's better at what he does.
Right.
She is better than what.
Right.
That's what I said in the very beginning. It's not about being funny. It's about being good at what you do.
Yes.
And even though I may not think what you do is funny, there's just like with wrestling.
Yes.
You still have to have technical. That there's no stand-up comic that gets onto an HBO special and goes, "I didn't plan anything out. I'm just going to be funny for an hour."
Of course.
That doesn't exist. You
Of
need
course.
to have my technical ability in writing material may be better than theirs, but from a technical perspective.
Yeah.
But their material combined with their character and their delivery is a much better performance than me, and I can respect that.
Exactly.
But they still have to have those elements. Just like in wrestling, the 6'10" guy, the 300-pound, 6'10" scary guy, still has to know how to take a punch.
Yeah.
He still has to know how to get out of a small package. There's still the basic things where you still have to respect him as a wrestler, even though you're like, okay, he's not a good wrestler.
But he still has something.
Be his opponent in the ring, right? He needs to know. You still need to know the basics.
Yeah.
So that's in stand-up comedy. Even the worst stand-up the people, I don't want to call them the worst stand-up comics, but the stand-up comics that I don't necessarily find funny, or I find that have a very hacky, non-technical, like I just like cheap stuff, or like they're just a character, that type of stuff. They still have they still have a notebook. They still have the same. They still go to the gym. They still try out material. This process is still the same. They just happen to have a combination that the crowd likes, and I focus on a very technical end that no one buys my T-shirt.
But isn't that like?
But I still have to respect them as a performer because they still had to do the basics.
Of course,
we still all have.
Yeah, no. You still respect the performer. You absolutely still respect the performer, but at the same time,
but you can't just get the basics overnight.
No.
Like the basics don't just pop out of
no. But there's a difference between people who but people do get head starts. You know what I'm saying? Like there are people who get an initial start because of a situation.
Yeah, but that's luck. Right? It's opportunity and luck. It's just being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's still like if you're somebody who's caught in that grind, it still fucking sucks. To see, you know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, but you can't cut. Who cares?
You're right. You have to move on. That's all you can do. And like you're 100% right. That's all you can do. It's just to kind of move on and do everything you can do.
You can't control that.
But I always
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? In wrestling, like if one guy becomes successful, does that prevent everyone else from not becoming successful? You all can be.
No,
I mean,
of course.
It's not a
no.
Right,
I just always wondered
I
just always wondered if it was a thing in the comedy world. If that because like in wrestling, that's a thing. In wrestling, you'll see like and by no means like I was always happy for anybody that ever got a deal that I was friends with. I was never like the hating type. I'm still not like that. Like I'm not that kind of person. I'm just not big on the negativity. I like to vent on Twitter about sports that don't go my way, and then it's it. It's over. I'm done with it. I like that. Like I said, I like to watch comedies. I like to have fun, things like that. But I always wondered because in the wrestling world, there were always those guys that were like, "Oh man, he did fucking steroids," and like I'm trying to do things the right way, and I'm not doing steroids, and he got the deal. And I was always kind of like, first of all, if you wanted that fucking, he wanted it that fucking bad. I'm not condoning what he did. I'm not fucking doing that shit because as bad as I want it, I don't want it bad enough that I'm willing to do steroids. You know what I'm saying? Like if I do this, I'm stubborn enough to say I'm gonna do this the right way. So I don't just want to make it. That was part of my goal. Part of my goal was not only do I want to do this, but I want to do it successfully, the right way. Then there's other people who are like, no, my goal is to fucking make it. I'll do it. I have plenty of my friends, man, steroids in the independent locker room scene, shit, pain pills and steroids everywhere. That's what goes around. You know what I mean? That's like Skittles, man. That's nothing. It's up to you as the individual to define your own goals. Is my goal to be successful? By any means necessary, and unfortunately, in my experience in the wrestling world, and it was one of the reasons that I kind of lost my passion for it. I did get hurt, but I tried a couple times to make it work again, and I just wasn't as passionate about it. And a big reason for that is because I kept seeing the people that were willing to do anything it took, regardless of morals, get rewarded. And that's really what turned me off, because I loved wrestling, but that, and also, I met my wife, and there's other things that come up, distractions that take you away from your tunnel vision. But it kind of it left a bad taste in my mouth in terms of like the wrestling, the business side of it, right? Like, for instance, you don't reward the guy who's busting his ass, in the gym. You're rewarding the guy who is able to get 20 of his buddies to come and buy tickets. Because that's what the local indie promotion needs to be successful. I need the ticket seller. And if there's not people in the seats, I can't have a show for you to have a match on. So I got to put this guy, and I got to put the belt on this guy, because he's literally selling 20 tickets a day. Like, he's going out there on the street and literally selling them for me. So it was like some of the business stuff that just like was frustrating. And I guess that's essentially where I was going, because I always wondered if it was like that for like every performing industry. Not legitimate sports, because that's just right. That's really
it's called show business.
Yeah, it's
called show business.
Yeah.
It's not called show fun. It's not called.
Yeah.
It's show business. And in stand-up comedy, we had plenty of. Someone would get on Letterman, right, and you'd go, "He got on Letterman. Fucking, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
Why didn't I get that?"
Right.
But you have to realize, you could still think that.
Yeah.
I thought that plenty of times. Comics think that all the time.
Yeah, of course.
It may be nicey.
Okay.
But people will be like, "Can you believe that guy got that
right.
thing?" But the thing is that there's not just one thing.
Of course.
Just because that guy got on Letterman doesn't mean it prevents you from being on.
Yeah, of course.
They put on comics all the time. So just because, if anything, you should be thinking, if they thought that guy was good, then you should, when you audition, you should fucking be able to get on no problem.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So it's that's why, like, focusing on things that you could control. It's like in stand-up, we saw it all the time that like new rooms would open. Like, I think, and DFS is like this. I think every industry is like this. The better that the industry does works for everyone.
Yeah.
So if you have like if in stand-up, if people are coming out to clubs to see good stand-up comics, that even though you don't respect those comics, it's still people coming out to see stand-up comedy. That's just more money being put into the market. Right? Like, if I'm going on the road and it's like I got to do, because I would work with headliners that would complain, because a lot of times on the road they would string like they're called one-nighters. Probably it's very similar to wrestling, where you're doing an event, a show on a Wednesday, and then moving and doing another show at 2 hours from there on a Thursday, and then another one. Like, you'd be going like, imagine doing like, you're going to do Ithaca, New York on Tuesday night, and then Oswego on Wednesday night, and you're playing these small venues. Right. So like, that's what, like, in comedy, it would be like road gigs where you basically did bar shows. Yeah. Shows that would be at bars. So like every Tuesday, this bar has a show, but they're in fucking Clarksville, Tennessee. And then the next night you go to somewhere else. These are really shitty shows. Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you, like, you do it for the paycheck. They're not very fun. A lot of times it's like 40 people and they don't even turn the fucking game on. They have a college basketball game on the fucking TV. They don't even turn off. But I would work with headliners that would say like that they're too good for this. Like, they would complain about like the shit. Like, can you? I need to find a way to do what it's like the fact that that this little dumb fuck town is able to have a comedy show where you get paid $300 and I get paid $125 on a Tuesday to do the thing that we love to do, and then are able to then go Wednesday to this other dump. Like, that's good for comedy. If it wasn't for these fucking stupid fucks here, I mean, whatever. Typically it's like backwoods places. It wouldn't be the best gigs, but I'm like, if it wasn't for the fact that people are willing to spend their money on stand-up comedy, what would you be doing right now? You'd be sitting at home making nothing. So what the fuck are you complaining about? So I would want to see more. If I was an independent wrestler, I want to see that someone from your area be like big, because that all that does is promote that industry in the area that you're in.
Yes, but
imagine someone from your small town.
You want to see somebody make it, but sometimes when you see somebody make it who maybe based off the way they did it, what got them there.
Yeah, but that's not up to you.
It's not up to
you. What does that have to do with you?
What it has to do with you is at a certain point, you have to come to make a decision. If you want to continue and make this a reality, whatever your dreams are, whether they're big, if your dream is just to make a living at all, and maybe that's only like, maybe your goal is to make a 50 grand in a year. If you're in New York City, you're looking at what you seriously got to make like 150 grand. Like if you want to live in New York, you know, or something crazy. So depending on where you live, if that's your goal, fine. But if your goal really is my goal is to make it to the top. My goal is to in comedy get that HBO special. And in the wrestling world, you say your goal is to make it to the WWE. Let's just use that as the most basic example of success. And you see people that go, and the only people that are getting called. I'm not saying this happened. I'm just talking hypothetics. Because now I'm a little now I'm just curious, and I'm in the zone about I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question. So at some point you're really passionate about the subject, right? Say in your case comedy, and then it's like you have to do fucked up things. Like every guy that does steroids.
You don't have to, but you don't have.
But those guys, you see a pattern, right? You keep getting skipped, and all your buddies are getting skipped. But the guys that are coming in, and juicing up. And, you know, carrying the bags of such and such, literally carrying the bags of a veteran wrestler because of a connection or whatever the case is they may be. I'm trying to think of like fucked up behaviors. I just having a hard time doing that. But steroids is the most basic one. Is
behavior. You know? A lot of it is who you know.
No,
it's all the entertainment industry.
Yes, but I'm just saying no, like think about it though. You come into a position where you're like, I either have to bite the bullet and do these things that I don't believe are moral, I don't believe are authentic. If I go and
you don't have to.
You don't have to, but then
you don't have.
But then you may be choosing to not be successful. You may be choosing.
No, you already are successful. Maybe that's the problem.
Well, but again, I already set the precedent that your goal was to make it.
And that's the problem. That's your problem. That's the other guys aren't your problem. The problem is that your goal is way too fucking high.
So if your goal is to make it to the WWE, so you're saying you just shouldn't have those goals.
No, your goal is to be the best. Your goal is to be the best wrestler you can be. Hey, you know what? My goal. Imagine if I had the goal of being a billionaire.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like hey. If I just made the goal of being a billionaire, you know what the best way to become a billionaire is?
What?
Steal $1 billion.
Well, that could be the quickest way. Right.
No, but that's what you're talking. But I'm talking about if your goal is I want to build a successful company that makes a bunch of money. Right. It may not be $1 billion, but it could be $1 billion.
Yeah.
And if it ends up being $50 million, it's still a successful. I'm not sitting there going, I can't fucking believe I made $50 million this year and I'm not a billionaire. Well, you still have to in order to make $1 billion, you have to first make your first million, right? If you're stepping in going, I'm making $25,000 and I'm trying to go directly to being a billionaire, that's what you're describing of, do I need to rob the bank in order to make $1 billion? But no, all you have to do is make your first million. So you're thinking in terms of, you're seeing these people that you don't respect doing immoral things like rob the bank for $1 billion, not get caught, and they're sitting there with $1 billion, and you're sitting there going, well, I guess I have to quit now. It's like, well, why don't you just turn your $25,000 into $1 million and then $1 million into 50 million? Like, that doesn't prevent you from doing that. But when your goal is directly the $1 billion, your goal should be the million. Yeah. Your goal, and whenever you set goals, don't set goals to be like for DFS. My goal isn't to. There's some people's goal I've heard is to win the Millie Maker, and I go, that's fucking stupid. Because like, why isn't your goal be good enough that you can make $20,000 this year playing every day? Because in order to win the Millie Maker, you're probably going to have to be good enough to be able to make $20,000 a year playing regularly, then make $50,000 a year. Of course, you know how you could skip all of that and win the Millie Maker? By just getting fucking lucky. I mean, people get lucky. I mean, it's still gambling. People have won the Millie Maker that are fucking horrible. I mean, we see it all the time. Right. right? Some random fucking person that puts together some bullshit lineup, and it's like no one, right? But like that's not, you can't recreate that. That's the person that took steroids. Someone that took $20, mashed a bunch of buttons.
Yeah.
They ended up getting the guy that has 17
Except you
touchdowns.
can't take the same steroids. It doesn't exist. You can't take the same exact one they took.
Right, it doesn't. But you have to treat it that way. So don't think in terms of I need to win the Millie Maker. I need to win a live final for $1 million.
Yeah.
Think in terms of if you see people cutting corners and getting there, that doesn't prevent you from not getting there.
Yeah, no, of course.
You could still go the same way that you're going.
Yeah.
They didn't take a spot from anyone.
Oh, of course.
So you don't have to compare yourself.
But again, it depends on the individual's goals, and regardless of whether you think they're too high, they're unattainable. At the end of the day,
well, they're attainable. They're just too high for the moment that you're at.
Well, that's a whole separate issue, right? Everybody, like, even if my goal may be to win the Millie Maker, that may be my goal. I still have to hit. I'm still gonna consider mini goals an accomplishment. So when I do get that first tournament win, I'm still gonna consider that a win. It's not my ultimate goal, but it was my, short-term goal. I hit that, yeah.
But then why can't you focus on that? When I was doing stand-up comedy, like my goal essentially was in the beginning to get paid doing this. Like in the beginning, you don't even get fucking paid.
Yeah.
And my goal was, can I get on TV?
Right.
Like Letterman or something, a 5-minute spot, Conan, whatever. Like that's not going to be, if you got on Letterman and got a 5-minute spot on Letterman, like that's a very big deal to stand-up comics. But in the grand scheme of your career, it means nothing.
Right.
But if my goal from the very beginning is to have an HBO special or to have a Emmy-winning sitcom, like your goal needs to be like, why don't you develop 10 minutes first? Like why the fuck why are you thinking about the syndicated sitcom? You haven't even written 10 minutes of material worth of fuck.
Oh, dude.
Like, don't think about that goal. If you see people attaining those goals through these methods that you find morally objectionable, it still doesn't prevent you from writing your first 10 minutes of material. It still doesn't prevent you from getting your first paid gig. It still doesn't prevent you from getting on Letterman, getting a commercial, getting on a fucking pharmaceutical commercial where you act like you have diarrhea.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Probably pays $25,000 for that. Like those, you shouldn't think of my goal is to, no basketball players, like my goal is to be Michael Jordan. Like, you still haven't perfected a jump shot yet.
Yeah.
Why are you saying your goal is to be Michael Jordan? How about your goal is to make your high school basketball team?
Yeah.
Like these things need to happen first. So that's what I was saying before I'm not saying to like get rid of your dreams. It's just that by always reaching for the wildly successful dream, it prevents you from working on the little things and the step goals that will eventually get you.
You're just saying if you have those dreams, you still need to establish those short-term goals in order to reach those dreams. Right. You don't just go from
Right. So if you see anyone achieving goals past what you're at, that doesn't stop you. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game in entertainment.
Right.
There's ton. Look at even in wrestling, even in comedy. It's not like John Mulaney's famous. I guess no more white guys could ever be stand-up comics again. It's like that doesn't exist. I mean, it's just as long as you're good enough, you get obviously there's a lot of luck involved. Who you know and be right place, right time.
But again,
but you still need to be good.
Yeah, yes, but even being good, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. In that you like part of the skill, or if you want to accept your skill, is accepting your skill, accepting what you're actually good at. Like you want to be a comedian, right? You want to be like John Mulaney and talk differently, and act differently, and like wear suits. But maybe that's not really what you're good at. You want to be that guy, but you have to know within yourself. You have to be self-aware enough to recognize I am not that guy. I am this guy. And I need to be this guy because I'm better at being this guy. Even though I may enjoy being that guy more now, I will eventually enjoy being this guy more because I'll be more successful that way. And I'm going to enjoy being successful and being able to make a living off of doing comedy or whatever the case may be. But that's still part of it, right? It was the same thing in wrestling all the time. Like, I never wanted to be like a pretty boy character. I was always growing up, man. I was always a little chubby, man. I had acne in high school and all that. I was none of that. When I graduated high school, that's when I don't know. I just got into wrestling and just fucking lost a shit ton of weight, and everything just kind of, I fell into this role. I did not want to do that, though. I was not comfortable. And I did this little weird dance thing, and I was fucking never dance. I don't fucking dance. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I was kind of like put into a role. I was uncomfortable, and I didn't have a substitute to put in place. I didn't have like my voice to put over that or to kind of step up and take charge. And part of it was just because I didn't want to be the character. I just wanted to wrestle, man. I didn't care if there was nobody in the fucking building. I just wanted to get out there and like put a cool match together that I could watch on TV.
But that's part of wrestling.
Of course.
But that is part of wrestling.
No, it is, and that's all stuff.
So you can't complain. You can't complain about your week. I could never complain that when industry people would tell me you're a great writer, but I don't see you getting a development deal.
Right.
Like, that's what like networks would like. I don't see you getting a 3-year development deal from NBC to try to write a sitcom. Right? Like, you're a good writer. I hope you put together a writing package or whatever like that. But I don't look at that and go, well, fuck that. I think people that could be like sitcom people are bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's either that's part of the, like, you either have to accept that you're going to be, you're not going to have the sitcom. And you may be the writer on the sitcom, and you may end up being the head writer on fucking The Tonight Show and making fucking $2 million a year. I mean, you could still be extremely rich doing that shit and not be famous.
Oh, yeah.
People won't know who you are, yet you're still making fucking 6 figures a year. Yeah. But that's what I view as successful. But don't focus. Either try to correct and work on your weaknesses, or focus on your strengths. But in either case, you shouldn't be complaining about it.
Yeah.
You can't complain about one person having less technical abilities from you and having absurd amount of charisma and him being more successful than you and going, well, that's bullshit. That is like, no, but that's part of wrestling.
Yeah.
Just like in stand-up comedy. It's having that having the delivery and charisma and being like that, not being the best joke writer. Not even, like, that's part of stand-up comedy. I can't complain.
No. It's nothing to do with complaining about that. What it has to do with is recognizing, again, like even aside from all that, it goes back to having the skill to recognize what you're actually good at and doing that. You know what I'm saying? And accepting that. Right. Like that's it's not about it's not about hating.
You can work on your weakness.
It's not about hating on others that made it in the field. It's about, like, again, step A. What are your goals? My goal is to be successful, to find success. I want to make it to the WWE. Well, how fucking bad do you want to make it, bro? Because if you ain't cutting it the natural way, you may have to do.
That's the problem.
It don't matter though. That's still somebody's goal. You can't tell me somebody's goal. If my goal is to play football, I'm playing football. My goal is to make it to the NFL. I'm never gonna fucking make it to the NFL if I don't have that as a goal. It's not gonna just fall in my lap because I was just happy playing football and it fell in my lap. You gotta catch the ball first.
You learn how to catch a fucking ball.
But what's gonna motivate me to catch that fucking ball, right? Ending up in the NFL. So I see what you're saying, and like you're very much like, you gotta have the short term goals. Let's take it day by day, and I agree with that. But in order to have the true motivation to get what you want to be, there's gotta be, like, even if your goal is just, I want to be the best fucking player I can be, like, you can have that goal. Yeah, I agree with you. You still got to have these other goals you want to hit. You know what I'm saying? Like, to get to that point. So it's like, okay, I want to make $1 million playing DFS. All right, well, that's great. You can have that as a goal, but how many goals do you have to hit to actually get there? Well, probably about 1 million of them. You know what I'm saying? Let's start with one and $1 head that, whatever your goal may be. But, like, at the same time, like, you still want to have, like, right? You still want to have that over your head, like, this is what I want to do, because that's what keeps you motivated to continue to strive for it. So, like, I agree with you in that you got to have short
to strive goals. For the middle stuff first. I mean,
yeah.
Anytime anyone is focused on long shot stuff, they tend. Now there are people that are able to do it. I get it. But from what my experience and from what I view, especially, it's definitely relevant in DFS, is that by focusing on the outlier result, the outlier goal, it's still nice to have that goal. It's still nice. It's still nice in stand-up comedy. It's not nice to HBO special, whatever. But the more that you focus on that outlier 1% goal, which you can attain. Not saying you can't, but it's less likely to happen. Probability wise, you're most likely not going to get there. But if you constantly focus on that as your goal, your mindset is going to be geared a lot towards shortcuts. Because you're looking at you're not in the mindset of like
that goes back to the morality thing, right? Because what is steroids in relation to the wrestling business? It's a shortcut. You could either do it the natural way, the hard way, get the look you need to get. You can get it, you know what I mean, no problem. But you're electing to not use the steroid. You're electing to not use the because that's a morality thing though. That's like, yeah, you want it, but you want it the right way.
Even the people that take steroids don't even make it.
No, of course. But I do believe but at the same time, there is something to like they were willing to do whatever for them. That wasn't for those people. They decided it wasn't that bad of a moral issue. It was like, it's not. I don't really think it's a big deal. I'm fucking doing it. I don't care.
But I'm not even talking about moral issues.
Yeah, but it goes hand in hand, right? Like, what's your goal and how bad is it your goal? If your goal was just to be a comedian, then sure. But if your goal was to have an HBO special, and then say there was a trend or a pattern of people taking this shortcut. You know what I'm saying? Like, how bad do you want this? And how do you want this? Do you want this bad enough you'll do anything it takes? Or do you want this just bad enough to where it's like, no, I want this, but I still want to be myself and I want to do this the right fucking way. Like put it this way. Say you're trying to be a professional wrestler and your goal is to be successful, but there's only one way to be successful. And that's to work for Company A. And Company A says, dude, no problem. You know, steroids are legal and everything, but like, I don't care what your belief is in them, but you do the steroids, you get the contract. It all goes down to how bad do you want the contract? That's the truth. And like in my at the time when I was wrestling, I was already kind of falling out with the industry anyway. I was already seeing the business side of it. And I was a naive kid, like you, man. I first started getting around it when I was like 16 years old. So I was real naive. And I thought it was this great industry. And I hop in here and you start seeing the reality of it. And you're like, nah, I don't really... I don't want to spend my career on shady fucking people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like doing like weird shit. And I felt like, has
anyone walked into a training facility the first day of wrestling and gotten a contract with the WWE?
It depends on the scenario. I'm assuming you're not talking about those like there are oddball instances.
I'm talking about you literally walk in on the street, off the street, and you get a contract with the WWE in one day.
No. But there are obviously guys who get it quicker than others, you know. Like in wrestling, you see it differently. Like if a guy comes in and he's in good shape, but kind of average good shape, like the guys you see at the gym, like he's in good shape. But then you see the guy that like comes in and he's like, holy fuck, man, this guy's fucking like that's like bodybuilder, like this guy's not normal. That's the guy he may only be there 2 or 3 months. Was he born
that way?
No, but
yeah, but the guy that walked into the gym,
he elected to take a shortcut to get there. You see my point? Like,
what shortcut?
He took the steroids to get there. So it only took him 3 months because he did the steroids, whereas the other guy, maybe it took him 1.5 years, 2 years, if at all. Maybe he doesn't make it ever because now there's a younger guy who passed him. I'm just saying hypothetics again. There's no specific. I mean, I've seen all this shit.
The guy that just walked in with the
hypothetical.
The guy that walked in with the steroids. Did he become the Rock? Is he the Rock? Is he Dwayne Johnson?
No, but he got a contract and he was able to feed his family.
Oh, but that he's not successful. No, you're telling me that the only way. Yeah,
no. I said to be successful was to make it. I said to be successful was to make it to the WWE. I didn't say he had to be the Rock.
Okay.
He just had to make it there. You know what I mean?
And then do what?
Well, at that point, like you said, maybe his goal from that point, maybe the reason he wanted to get to the WWE was so he could feed his family and make a living off it, and that was his own. That was it. That was the only reason he wanted to do it.
Okay, but I mean, he may not be his contract. He may be done in 6 months.
It's very possible, yeah.
Right. Why would he? All the people that you talk about like that, you know how many stand-up comics when I was younger, like in the late 90s, that got development deals that just never got sit. Like never, they got paid $250,000 for like 2 years to basically prevent other people from using you, and they did nothing for like so many. I mean, it was ridiculous. You know how many comics were like, "Oh, I'm just looking to get a development deal." Like people that didn't want, like, I'm gonna make the relation to what you said about wrestling. Yeah. There were a lot of comics in New York City that I never found to be that funny, that their obvious goal was to become famous, not to become stand-up comics. Right. Stand-up comedy was just a way to showcase themselves so they could get into a movie, into, you know, like they wanted to be an actor. So like they did stand-up comedy good enough. I mean, that they were good. They were a good stand-up comic, but they weren't trying to be a good writer. They weren't trying to really work on their material. They're like, can I get 15 minutes? Like, if you're going to work on the road as a headliner, you need an hour of material. But there are plenty of guys in New York City, girls, whatever, that only had 15 minutes. Like, literally, I need to perfect this 15 minutes that showcases my voice, my character. Like, basically, here's a package that you could have an NBC Thursday night show around. And that's all they did. They never got better. They never had new material. They never got better. Some of those people, ended up with like they were the side character in some show that ended up getting canceled after a season. Some of tons of them got development deals. Yeah. Tons of them. Like, here's $200,000 for 2 years, which basically, like, if they got a development deal from ABC, that means like they couldn't appear on and be like, basically, we got you locked up for 2 years and we're going to develop something around. But all it is just like a retainer, like a holding thing. Yeah. Like, it's just basically, you can't do anything else unless it's on ABC, unless it's with ABC. Yeah. And we got you locked in for 2 years so no one else can take you. So I would say 90% of those times, nothing ever happened. People were like, I need to get my development deal. They get their $200,000, their $300,000. They maybe a pilot gets shot. I mean, half of the time that doesn't even happen. Yeah. But maybe they get it. They actually get a show built around them. They shoot a pilot, and it never gets picked because 95% of pilots don't get picked up. So like now it's 2 years later, and now they're back at the same New York Comedy Club, and they still only have that 15 minutes. They haven't become good stand-up comics. Yeah. So now I need to get another development deal. I need to get like you know how many comics there were that you've never heard of that don't do stand-up comedy anymore because they were never in the business to do stand-up comedy. Right. That are now like failed actors that are like, maybe they got a bit role in some movie somewhere. It's someone that has an IMDb page. It has a whole bunch of credits, but it's all for like small stuff in movies. That I remember from 1997 in a comedy club that they're keep on looking for the shortcuts. I'm going to do stand-up comedy and I'm going to try to my goal is to be famous. And I'm not talking about famous as in oh, I remember you. Like, no, they're talking about Tom Cruise famous. They're talking about, I want to be a movie star. I want to be on a sitcom where I'm the star and I'm on stage getting an Emmy for the 10th season and getting $1 million an episode. Those were their goals. Most of them ended up, they're now fucking waiters in LA at 48 years old with a whole bunch of little movie credits because since their goal was so far out there, the only reason they were doing stand-up, the only things that they were doing were the shortcut versions of trying to get to be the Hollywood superstar. And then the people that became Hollywood superstars were Zach Galifianakis, were something that just like, you would have never built a sitcom around him when I started out, but he developed his voice, and 20 years later, he's in The Hangover. Yeah. And so there are more people that failed trying that shortcut, taking those steroids, getting a little bit, I made it by getting their first development deal, by getting their first 6-month contract with the WWE, going, I made it, I took the steroids, I made it, and then they don't get renewed. And now they're back down going, well, what's their goal now? They never developed the skills to become a good wrestler. So now where they end up 10 years from now, they're an accountant. I mean, like, that's what I mean by you're making your goals to so high that you never got the bare basic skill set. Someone in DFS could be like, my goal is to make $1 million. Can you give me a lineup? Right. And it's like, I can give you a cash lineup that I'd be using in this contest tonight in NBA. But like, unless you're going to come back to me for NBA cash lineups, how are you ever going to make that amount of money on your own if you never learn how to fucking play? Right. Like, yes, you may make $50 today by using my lineup or something, but if you're never going to learn, like, let's say they end up making, there are plenty of people that bink a GPP for $50,000 and they think they're they're a professional fucking DFS player. Oh, yeah. And then a year later, you never hear from them again because they went broke because they think that who knows, a year later, a month later, they win $50,000. And next thing you know, the next day they're in the goddamn Thunderdome.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't understand how statistical variance works.
Right.
Like I binked 100K before. I binked multiple 50Ks before myself. And I every day question on whether or not I just got luck. Am I actually good at this game?
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 5 years, yet my still thing is like, my goal is not to win $10 million. My goal is to just, can I make a living so I don't have to do another job?
Yeah.
And can I pay my rent and my bills and live comfortably? Be able to have some nice things or whatever. I mean, like that type of stuff. But you can't get to there without learning the fundamentals. And if I started from, hey, dude, give me a lineup, you'll never get there. And if you do get there, luckily, you'll never stay there. So it's the same thing to me when I view with steroids and getting to the WWE. Like 20 of the guys that took steroids and got a 6-month contract, like they're not in the WWE anymore because, they took the shortcut, they got their chance, and they blew their chance because they never learned the fundamentals.
Yeah. I do get the point you're trying to make. In wrestling, there's some differences, obviously, but I get the point. I definitely get the point of what you're saying. With that said, at what point did you stop doing comedy, and how did you get into DFS from there?
Well, I did comedy from 17 to 33. I mean, when you're on the road doing stuff, you could do other things. So like,
I figured it had to overlap. You wouldn't just quit to try. Let me try something new. DFS. Yeah. So I would imagine there was overlapping. Yeah.
Right. Well, like stand-up comedy in general, I was doing since I was 17 till about like maybe 34 years old, but in different, like I was in New York till I was 28, and then 28 I moved to Louisville to do more road work. But I mean, during that time, I was on Wall Street as a web developer. I mean, stand-up comedy doesn't pay enough. Like, until I got to Louisville when I was 28 and being on the road mostly full time. Like, even that is like, as a feature, you're making like 22,000 a year. I mean, like, I would still take web design work. I mean, I would still take freelance web design work. So like everything I've done in my life for a living has been like mishmash of stuff. Like I played poker for a living for 5 years. But while I was playing poker for a living, I also did stand-up comedy. It's not like I wasn't doing that also. It's just that I would go into the city, do a spot at the comic strip at 8:45, and then I would go to the fucking underground poker club, downtown, and then play fucking 4 or 5 hours of poker, and then come home, go to sleep, wake up, I have a web design project to do, work 3 hours on that, then play some online poker, and then go, and then I'm taking a subway in to hang out and go to Stand Up New York, and I have a 7:30 spot. Like everything I've ever done is all like kind of I've never done one thing for a living, only because I'm a horrible employee and no one, I can never have a regular job because I need to do stuff on my own schedule. Like, it's like, just tell me what needs to be done and when it needs to be done by, and then leave me the fuck alone. So like, I'll get it done by that point.
So at what point did you decide to stop doing comedy, and why?
The pay sucks. Yeah. I started doing digital marketing. Web design, digital marketing, it's all kind of in the same.
Yeah, I get
right,
that.
right. It's all in the same. Search engine optimization and pay-per-click advertising. It's all together. Because like I was still doing stand-up comedy, but like I still need more money. I mean, it still doesn't pay enough when you're getting paid $400 for like Wednesday through Sunday in Greensboro, North Carolina, and you still have to pay for your own fucking gas. Like, and then fighting for like, $1,000 college gig. It's like, oh, that's a big deal. Yeah. Like you're barely making it by. Right. And then you're doing these gigs and you're not like getting anywhere. Like you're not like, I'm performing for $400 in Greensboro in order. So I have the privilege of coming back next year and performing for $400. Like no one's remembering who I am. No one's buying anything, my merchandise. No one's not like, it seems like I'm on a hamster wheel, a perpetual, like if I'm perfectly fine with making $20,000 to $25,000 a year doing stand-up comedy, like, okay, that's still fine. but I need something more just to fucking, to make a living.
Yeah.
So I picked up some digital marketing clients locally, and I was doing so well with picking up clients, doing digital marketing that I was making like 4 times more than I was doing stand-up comedy. And I was like, at that point, I started like not taking gigs. Like I would get offered, like, oh, you want to do a one-nighter in fucking Johnson City, Tennessee for $125, and it takes me like 4.5 hours to drive there. And yes, they'll give me a hotel but it's like it's $125, and I have to waste 2 days to perform in front of some fucking trucker rally or some bullshit. And it's like I'm making like $2,000 a week doing digital marketing. Like at some point, yeah, it's fun going on the road when you're like 25 years old. But by the time you're 32, 33, now I'm 41. Like at that point, like some of the drives that I did in stand-up comedy, I think of now, and I go, why the driving 7 hours to do that? Why the fuck for $75?
Oh yeah,
I would never do that.
Oh yeah, dude.
So it's like it's the same type of mentality. And then since digital marketing means I'm working from home, so like I'm not. Yeah, I have to put on pants to go to some client meetings, every so often, maybe 3 or 4 times a month or something. But I'm home doing nothing, and I forgot about sports for like 10 years. I used to follow sports religiously when I was younger. And then once you get to a certain age, you figure, why do sports matter?
Well, yeah, when you don't have money on it, it doesn't.
Right. Why do they matter? So I follow politics a lot more.
Right.
Because that actually affects your life in some way. Policies and who you vote for and that type of shit. So here in Louisville, we got a soccer team in the USL second division in 2015. And I followed soccer. Like that was the only sport that I like followed. I hadn't followed baseball, basketball, football in 10, 12 years. Like name a Giants running back. Rodney Hampton. That's where I go back to. Like O.J. Anderson. Who's the quarterback before Eli Manning? Who did we have?
Oh, the fucking
Giants. Ken Graham? Yeah, Ken Graham was the quarterback. Oh, remember those days? Those were horrible fucking Giants days.
I'm a Jeff fan.
Or Vinny Testaverde on the fucking Jets.
Let's go. Vinny and the Jets.
Right? So, like, that's the era of, like, so I didn't even follow sports or anything. So that's why I never heard these DraftKings commercials. Like, the whole blitz during that time with, like, oh, you could win $1 million. Like, I wasn't watching sports. So, like, and they didn't advertise on, like, NBCSN, like, for the soccer games. So I never even heard of it. Then some soccer supporter guy that I went to games with knew that I was like good with math and all that type of shit and said, do you play on DraftKings? Do you play Fantasy Premier League on DraftKings? You can make a lot of money. I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. He said, you should check it out. So I do a lot of research. I'm very obsessive compulsive, so I dive into shit. So I'm like, let me just do some research. And then when I looked at DraftKings and how it was all organized, like this reminds me a lot of online poker, like how the contests are organized and everything. And I looked at the scoring system and how the payouts were. I'm like, this is pretty. I think I can make money. Like I think I'm smart enough to make money. This is a game. This is and soccer. I know soccer, and it's like I was always involved with games. Like it's not the sports, it's the game. I played Football Manager, which is a simulation soccer game. And like, I knew how do I exploit this game? There was a million choices to make. It's like, how do I make the computer do what I want it to do?
Right.
So I'm like, and poker was all about game theory. So it's like, it's just about games. Give me Monopoly. There's a game theory to Monopoly. There's a game theory to Clue. There's a game theory to everything. So anytime I play a game, I'm looking to solve it. So I looked at this and I go, okay, I could do that. Why not? I watch the Premier League every weekend in the morning anyway. I'll put $400 in, right? I was making decent money, digital marketing. What else do I have to do? But I didn't care about I know the football season was going on, but I didn't even know I wasn't even paying attention. So then I just put $400 in and I played like $40 worth of contests. I think I made like $6 that first slate and basically just learned. Basically, I looked at this and going, I'm going to solve this game. Like it just came down to like my goal wasn't to make $1 million. My goal wasn't like that type of goal. My goal wasn't. I wasn't playing. I was playing like. I didn't play anything over $5. I was playing like the $2 double ups. I was playing the quarter arcade type of shit. But I was learning. Like I would download at that point. Yeah, they sell the CSVs. I was looking at the better players. I would see all these regulars playing for like $1,000 and everything, and go, let me check their lineups. And I'm looking, going, why did they play these guys over what I played? I played 2 of these guys, but they played 2. And I devoted so much time to studying. Like I was playing with soccer. So soccer back then, before they had interleague slates, would only have the Premier League and MLS. They didn't even have Champions League at that time, I don't think. So it's only Saturday and Sunday. Like that's it. Like during the week, they may be a Wednesday MLS slate. And MLS, the prize pools were like $1,000. It was barely anything. So it's not like I was doing this every day. It's not like baseball where like basketball every day. It's just like, oh, it's the weekend. I'm gonna do DraftKings Premier League, but like on Mondays, I would be studying the lineups from Saturday. I would get the contest and go, let me see what the good players are doing. I see this Saramek guy. I see this old T guy. And I see pew, pew, pew in the contest and whatever. And they're always doing well. And yeah, they're in 1,000, but they're also in my like $1 double up, right? They didn't have the limit then if it's under $5 with $1 million entry, like you could play everything. So just like I wasn't doing badly. Like I took $400 and by December, I still had $400. So like, to me, that was a win. That I was able to go up and down, and like I was up to like 800 and then down to like 200 and whatever. And all I was doing is and I'm only playing soccer. I wasn't paying attention to NFL, nothing. Just soccer, just Premier League, MLS, Champions League, and just learning just the fundamentals of playing DFS. But I'm viewing everything that I was doing relating to poker. So all the game theory to DFS, I'm relating to like the game theory of poker, game theory of DFS, game theory of poker. Like I'm not trying to predict if Wayne Rooney is going to score a goal today. I'm just trying to figure out whether or not he's worth 10,800 on this slate, and what does it do to my lineup construction, and how owned is he going to be in this like I'm thinking about all those other things. I don't care whether or not he scores a goal. I just want to know, can I build a lineup that has positive expected value for the contest that I'm in? That's all I care about. So I'm not worried that I'm not going through stats and XG stats and trying to figure out how many crosses are going to come in. I don't care about any of that. How do I build profitable lineups? And that's all I did. And then on Boxing Day, which is the day after Christmas, they typically have a very big slate. That's when all the English soccer teams play. And then I got tickets in. It was a $27 contest. And I never played that high. I never played a contest with more than double. I played the $5, nothing. I was playing $40 a slate. But I won satellite tickets into this $27 Boxing Day special, which had like a $50,000 prize pool. So I won like 4 tickets, something like that, from the satellites. And then the 4 lineups I played came in like, I think it was like 6th, 9th, 11th, and 13th. Like I got like 4 spots in like the top 10, top 12. And that came out to like $2,400. So I was able to turn my 400 into like 2,400. And of course, like everyone does when they make I mean, that's not a huge hit, but soccer, the contest, you can't win $1 million playing soccer. First place in soccer in the big GPP is like $5,000, right? Like that's first. So like if you win 5,000, because it's smaller contests. So once I won the 2,400, I'm like, I got this thing figured out, because that's what
everybody thinks. Yeah, right away.
So So now the golden boot, because that $27 contest, they typically have, it was called the golden boot. I typically played like the $3 or $4 GPP. The $27 the mid stakes GPP, I'm like, I don't have the money to play that.
Right.
I mean, I had the money, but I mean, I'm looking to play it as like seriously. So it's like, I'm not just going to spend, I'm not taking discretionary income and going, I'm just throwing this at like entertainment. I'm playing like I was playing poker. I have a bankroll. I'm building, like I'm playing it seriously.
Yeah.
So I took I started to play like 3 or 4 entries into that $27 contest for the next month. I took $2,400, and guess what I had at the end of January?
At the end of January, so what? Like, say,
I started January with $2,400. Guess what? I started playing the $27 mid stakes contest, and by the end of January, how much money do you think I had in my bankroll? I started with $2,400.
By the end of the month.
Yeah.
2,400? Did you break even? Is that a good guess?
$400.
Oh,
$400.
No. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. But I get it, though. It's like, get that confidence.
Some people think the opposite. Some people go, you had $74,000, and that's how you got all your bank.
No.
It's like, nope. Actually, I pretty much lost it all.
Yeah. People who've been,
right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people know about that.
Right. I pretty much lost it all back because I'm the $2,400 bankroll. I'm playing $200 a slate, right? And I'm playing GPPs and whatever, because obviously I got this all figured out. No, variance hits, and I'm like, okay, well, I should have known that beforehand because it's the same shit as poker, right? It's just because, you win a big hand doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So, I was still studying every day and everything like that. And then February comes around in Champions League. So now we have Tuesday and Wednesday slates for Soccer Champions League. And I built that I started with $400 in that February 1st, 2016. And then by August, by the start of the next season, I built my bankroll up to like $10,000 or $12,000.
Wow.
From $400.
Wow.
Just playing soccer. Remember, there's no big win, like not, you binked a big, like there's no bink to big nothing in soccer.
Yeah.
Like,
You got to build that up. Yeah.
The biggest thing you could bink is like $5,000 at most. But yeah, so I built it up. I built it up from there. But I just played soccer DFS.
Wow.
I was playing limited amount of cash games, some GPPs, and that's how I learned that. And that's how I learned how to play DFS. I didn't touch any other sport for over a year, and that's why a lot of people now know me for like Roto Grinder stuff or whatever. But for the most part, like I was just the soccer guy. And then I got involved with RotoWire, so I'm on the RotoWire soccer podcast. So like I'm primarily a soccer, and now it's kind of weird that since I expanded into other sports, that the only soccer contests I play now are the Premier League, or are the, like back then I would play literally every soccer contest because that's the only thing. Like it's a type of, imagine only playing MMA. It's like, well, there's one event on Saturday and like that's it. Like there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't follow any other sports, so it's not like I didn't have any. It's not like, I'm not playing to gamble. I'm playing to invest. So it's like I'm not going to just throw in my money and go, I'm going to look at an article and play an NBA contest. I don't know. If I can't play seriously, I can't play it at all. That's why esports, like I could be playing esports DFS right now, and it's still the same DFS concepts. But I have to make the mental calculation of if I'm going to play LOL, if I'm going to play, CSGO or whatever. Like I gotta learn I gotta literally download this fucking game and start fucking playing it. So I just understand what the goddamn video game is. And if I'm not willing to do that, I'm not gonna play it at all.
Right.
So that's how I viewed it. So I expanded once I got to soccer. I expanded to PGA. Because they used to give out those tickets, those free roll tickets once a month, the VIP free roll shit.
Yeah.
So the one they kept on having PGA shit, and PGA is so much game theory anyway. So I started playing PGA because at least I only have to make a lineup once a week, right?
Right.
It's PGA. Thursday, you set your alarm for Thursday at 7:00 in the morning to make sure you don't miss any withdrawals, and then you make a bunch of lineups. So I played PGA for a bunch. I have a losing lifetime fucking ROI in PGA, but I went up and down in some PGA, and then I went to baseball. And then I played baseball for a season. I got 2 second place GPP finishes, like both for like $20,000 or $25,000. And I was still playing soccer was still my main sport. But like baseball, well, I wasn't even all that serious. But I was experimenting with stuff with baseball. Like I wasn't stacking. I was studying lineups, studying everything. Then once that was over, then I got into NBA and NFL. And then there's more money in there. A lot of the soccer people don't even play those sports, and they always make fun of me now. It's like, oh, you don't play MLS DFS anymore? Like dude, the prize pools are like $1,000. I mean, like the MLS slate on Saturdays would be like the games would be from 3 o'clock to like 10 o'clock. And in soccer, the starting lineups for the teams only come out an hour before kickoff.
Right.
And if you're not starting in soccer, you don't play them in DFS because it's not unlimited substitution. So if your guy isn't starting, you cannot have them in your lineup. So in order to play MLS, you got to be able to hit lock at 3 o'clock and then be able to check lineups like fucking all through the whole day. Because there'll be a 5:30 game, there'll be a 7 o'clock game, there'll be a 7:30 game, and an hour before each of them, you have to check to see, is David Villa starting for the NYCFC? Is this guy back when I was playing like $40 a slate, and I could win $1,000, like that's fine. But when I'm playing $2,000 a slate in NBA, I'm not going to spend all Saturday checking MLS lineups for a $500 first place prize in a GPP. I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. So although I could be good at it, it's just the time investment is just not worth it anymore.
All right.
So that's why I focus now on the things that give me the highest ROI for the least amount of time.
You got to go where the money's at, man.
Is that a good enough story? I got it all in?
Yeah.
Is that comprehensive enough?
Yes, I think so. I think we'll cut it there, man. We've been on for like 2.5 hours, which is I didn't even realize it until.
Supposed to talk about comedy and wrestling.
I know.
That's why I'm surprised. You're like, tell me about your DFS career. It's like, Jesus, what time?
I know. I just, I told you I like comedy, so I had a feeling that we were going to spend a lot of time.
But it never said so. We would never had this long of a conversation.
We'll have to do it again though and get more into the DFS part. I mean, we got plenty of time, so. I'll,
maybe people will like this. Maybe people, because there's no DFS going on.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to hear this shit.
Hey, why not? I mean, listen, man. Like, I didn't do it. We did this just to reach out to different people in the industry, get to know some people, and just talk to them, get to know them. That's it. I mean, strategy stuff, bro. They could find your Twitter. You're doing stuff on RG, like. They can find our strategy content.
I'm not currently.
Not currently, but they can go watch a few things if they want to learn, right? Like,
just play whoever you want. There you go. Just play whoever you want, and it's fine.
That's it. That's all you got to do. It's that easy. But other than that, they could all
stack and play whoever
you want. They can follow you on Twitter at BlenderHD. You got a book you're working on? I saw on your Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know when the fuck that's going to come out, but Theory of DFS. I need to write it. I've been procrastinating.
Just gotta write it. That's all. So we'll be on the lookout.
Right. But it's all the book. The thing about the book is that nothing in the book is new.
Yeah.
The thing is that it's the stuff that gets talked about like 2% of the time that no one expands on. And it's stuff that good players do that they not even realize that they do it. And I'm explaining what it is that they do. Because 98% of this industry is you got to play Giannis tonight, or do you play Kawhi? Like the stuff that you should really be focusing on is that is the 22% own this guy at this price worth more or less to play than the 12% own guy at this price at that position, and who cares who the fucking players are? Just it's like you're making a financial transaction.
Right.
So it's like I don't even. That's the whole point. That's why people make jokes about play whoever you want, and it's like literally you can make a case to play whoever you want. It just depends on the lineup that you're playing. So that's the point of the book. Of like this book, people ask, is it going to be about football? Is it going to be about baseball? So far I've written I don't know 100. I don't know how much. There's barely any mentions of any sports in the book. Like the sports are only in the examples. Like it's kind of like here's a whole bunch of stuff. Here's the concept, and then so the Dodgers are playing so and whatever, and then Clayton Kershaw is this price, and this is why you would pick this guy, and then it moves on. It's like the actual how to pick good football players doesn't exist, but it's about the game aspect of everything. It gets talked about on shows, on podcasts all the time, but it's 2% of the conversation. And it doesn't get expanded. Imagine listening to a podcast on the NBA picks, and it'd be like my show would be it would start out by we're going to preview this 10-game NBA slate, and then I'm not going to mention any players you should play because you could play anyone. But if you play this guy, it'd probably be better to fade that guy. Well, should I play player A? No, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But if you play player A, don't play player B. And if you play player B, maybe D and E may be good together because they're on the other side of the game and they fill these other two positions. Well, what happens if I don't want to play player D? Then probably you shouldn't be playing player B. And if you're not going to play player B, you might as well play player A. So like that's kind of what the book. That's what I mean by play whoever you want. By all the decisions that you're making for a lineup affect one another.
Yeah.
And giving yourself enough leverage and giving yourself, you're trying to increase your expected value of a lineup for the contest that you're in. So it's not a matter of trying to figure out if some guy is going to hit 50 points tonight. There's a percentage of time he does, but I don't know if it's going to be tonight. I don't know if Mike Trout hits 3 home runs tonight. I don't know if he goes 0 for 4. But all I know is that he's going to be 22% owned. And should you play him in a lineup with this other stack? If you're playing a cheap Marlins stack, and that's going to be 3% owned, have fun. Play 22% owned Mike Trout. But if you're going to play the fucking Twins chalk stack, fucking get away from Mike Trout. And that's why, like, most shows are about, is Mike Trout going to hit a home run? My show is, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm not even predicting that. So that's kind of that's the theory of the book, of all the other stuff that has nothing to do with sport.
No, I get it though, dude. And like you said, it's the thing people pay the least attention to. I mean, I think,
and it's the thing that makes you the most successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was something that, like, I've always preached, even over here at Wise Take, like everything we preach to our guys, like thinking outside the box. And sometimes people get caught up even in like individual ownerships. And I like to tell people sometimes think about the build. Is your build contrarian? You know what I'm saying? Like think of it.
Right, you can play the chalkiest motherfuckers. You could play. Yeah. There are times. I mean, I've won GPPs playing like chalk city, and then like you play like the chalk team, like, you know, the times where like Giannis is out and like Middleton and Bledsoe are underpriced, like everyone jumps on the Bucks, that, those type of things. But then you find out that no one's playing the goddamn other side of the game. Right. And you go like, all I have to do is throw percent. I'll build that. I'll throw a fucking 4% owned whoever the shooting guard on their opposing team is. Right. To fill up my lineup. That game goes to overtime, and you win the fucking whole thing. And you're sitting there with fucking Ersan Ilyasov's 47 points at 8 million% ownership, and you go, "How did you win with all the chalk?" Well, it's like, how do you play the Bucks and chalk Bucks without playing the opposite side of the game in case fucking everything blows up? No one decided to do that. I decided to do it. I didn't know it was going to happen, but then it happened. Like that's the type of thing that people ask me. How'd you know so-and-so? How'd you know 2% owned Clint Capella was going to put up a 60-point game? I'm like, I didn't know. He was 2% owned, and he's Clint Capella. Anything could happen. Right? All I know is that if I'm playing chalk in the rest of my lineup, I got to find some fucking good player that's going to be low-owned. And it just so happened to be Clint Capella. I mean, like, that's it. Sometimes the answer is it just so happened I chose that guy because he's 2% owned and he's not a bad player. People pick these I'm going to pick a $3,200 bench player that's going to play 14 minutes because they're 1% owned. It's like, how many points do you get in 14 minutes? That's going to matter. Zach LaVine is going to be 3% owned today because he's 8,900 and no one thinks that they can keep it close with the Warriors. What happens if they do keep it close with the Warriors? Well, then he's going to score a bunch of points and no one's going to have him. So fucking play him. People are like, you're not afraid of the blowout? No, I play the blowout because you're afraid of the blowout.
Fair enough, man. This was a lot of fun. I mean, I appreciate.
There's no reason for it. There's no insight. I don't have magic. I didn't predict that shit. All I know is it's 17-point favorites. How do you play 17-point favorites? Because maybe they don't win by 17. Maybe today they don't.
Maybe it's today. Yeah, maybe they got the bubble guts and they just not holding up their end.
And sometimes they blown out by 40 points and my lineups have fucking suplex all of them. Tomorrow's another day.
Yeah, like you said, or you're just sitting around and yeah. That's the great thing about the daily fantasy sports, right?
Right. There's the DFS content out of 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I'm going to put a time marker. Like they're going to look for this interview, 2.5 hours with Jordan Cooper, and be, I got to hear all his smart takes about DFS, and then just a time marker, 2 hours and 36-minute mark. You got to DFS.
You got some DFS stuff after the comedy and wrestling talk. But
maybe people want to come.
Yeah, man, something different, bro. You know, it just kind of, it's natural. It was natural. This is the first conversation you and I have ever had outside of me reaching out to you like a few days ago saying you want to come on the show.
Was it a good conversation?
It was, man. I had a lot of fun.
Are you gonna take steroids after this?
No, definitely not. I'm way well past all that, man. Yeah, I've already came to terms. A lot of the conversation we were having, bro, like, was a lot of it was hypothetical because I just like. I like when I talk to different people, I like to see what's like. So if you were in this situation, what would you do? Like if you were, I'm just curious. I just like to. It helps me get to know like the person and how they think and what kind of person they are without, you only got so much, man. I mean, come on, really, we could have spent all day talking about everything in detail, but I had a lot of fun, man. I like doing that, putting people in if then scenarios, and because ultimately you find out different meanings. Like even with the whole thing with the goals, like, so you're saying, like, your goal should be, step one. That should be your goal. And, like, yeah, of course. And those goals work towards another goal or whatever. But, perception, everything like that. And you kind of see how people put things together. It's always, like, so I like to kind of, throw, like, hypothetical situations.
Do you think I knew enough about wrestling, though?
Oh, yeah. You knew enough to hold the conversation. It's a, bro, you know what it is, man? Like you said, it's show business to show business. That's, like... There's something to show business, and it's a unique thing. Like wanting to be the best. That's something where
and it's perfectly okay to be Norman Smiley.
It's okay.
It's perfectly okay to be
Norman Smiley.
You're never gonna win a belt.
Never win a belt, but he ended up getting a job behind the scenes for a long fucking time. The developmental, he was one of their head trainers for a long time. So the WWE, they didn't take care of him all at once, but they took care of him over the 20, 30-year mark. You know what I mean? And if his goal was to make a living in wrestling, which I'm sure it was, he accomplished his goal. Accomplished it.
What's wrong with that?
30s and 7s, that's what we say. So we're going to get out of here. Jordan, I appreciate you, bro. Might have to do a part 2. We'll see how long the quarantine goes. But I have a lot of fun doing these. I like to talk to people around the industry because there's so many different people. And, you got something that's bringing you together between us, the listeners, everybody. We all like DFS. And then you learn about different fucking things, man. I learned a lot about the comedy industry talking to you today. So I appreciate it, man.